My name is David, and today I'm going to tell you about the moment God spoke 5 words that shattered the way I'd been living for 37 years. Your fight is not yours. Before we continue, if this story resonates with you, please subscribe to this channel. Share it with someone who's exhausted from fighting battles that aren't theirs to fight, and leave a comment about your own journey with rest and surrender. I was 37 years old, living in Atlanta, working as a defense attorney at one of the city's most prestigious law firms. And I was a fighter. That's what made me good at my job. I never backed down, never surrendered, never stopped pushing until I won. In the courtroom, that mentality served me well. I'd built a reputation as the lawyer you wanted when the case seemed impossible, the one who'd find the angle no one else saw, the one who'd outwork, outsmart, and outlast the opposition. But somewhere along the way, I'd taken that fighting mentality and applied it to everything, every situation, every challenge, every problem. My marriage was struggling. I'd fight to fix it, reading books, scheduling date nights, working harder to be the perfect husband. My kids were acting out. I'd fight to correct them, implementing stricter rules, consequence charts, behavior modification strategies. My finances were tight. I'd fight to solve it, taking extra cases, cutting expenses, creating elaborate budgets, church leadership asking for volunteers. I'd fight to serve, leading Bible studies, organizing events, mentoring young men. I was fighting on every front, simultaneously all the time, and I was exhausted. My wife, Lauren, had been telling me for months that I needed to slow down, that I was spreading myself too thin, that I couldn't be everything to everyone. "David, you're going to burn out," she'd say. "You can't fight every battle." "Someone has to," I'd respond. "If I don't step up, who will?" But the truth was starting to become undeniable. I was losing more battles than I was winning. Not because I wasn't trying hard enough, but because I was trying too hard, in too many directions, without any real strategy or discernment. At work, I was taking on more cases than I could effectively handle. My win rate was dropping. Partners were starting to question whether I was overextended. At home, my efforts to fix my marriage were making Lauren feel controlled rather than loved. My strict parenting was creating distance with my kids rather than connection. At church, I'd volunteered for so many things that I was doing all of them poorly. I was leading a Bible study I hadn't prepared for, organizing events I was too busy to attend, mentoring guys I barely had time to meet with. I was fighting everywhere and losing everywhere. But I couldn't stop, because stopping felt like surrendering, and I'd built my entire identity on never surrendering. The breaking point came on a Tuesday in June. I'd been in court all day on a case I was desperately trying to save, a client who'd made some bad decisions and was facing serious consequences. I'd worked around the clock for weeks, pursuing every possible angle, filing motion after motion, fighting with everything I had. The judge ruled against us, decisively, and my client was going to prison. I walked out of that courtroom feeling like I'd been physically beaten. Not just because we'd lost, but because I'd given everything, every ounce of energy, every hour of sleep I'd sacrificed, every strategy I'd employed, and it hadn't been enough. I sat in my car in the courthouse parking lot, too exhausted to even drive home. And for the first time in my adult life, I started to cry. Not sad tears, but tears of complete depletion, of having nothing left. My phone buzzed with texts, Lauren asking when I'd be home, my son's teacher asking about a conference I'd missed, the Bible study leader asking if I'd prepared for Wednesday's session, a partner at the firm asking about another case. Everyone needed something, everyone was fighting a battle, and everyone seemed to think I was the one who should fight it for them. I didn't have anything left to give. That's when I heard it. Not an audible voice, but something deeper, a knowing that came from somewhere beyond my own thoughts. "David, your fight is not yours." I looked around the parking lot as if expecting to see someone, but I was alone. "Your fight is not yours," the voice said again. "It is mine. Rest." Rest. The word felt foreign, impossible. How could I rest when there were so many battles to fight, so many people depending on me? So many problems that needed solving. But if I rest, Everything will fall apart, I said out loud to the empty car. No, the voice said with gentle certainty. If you rest, you'll finally see that I've been fighting for you all along. You've just been too busy fighting your own battles to notice mine. I sat there for a long time, those words echoing in my mind. Your fight is not yours. It is mine. Rest. I didn't understand it fully, didn't know how to apply it, didn't know what it would look like practically, but I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I couldn't keep fighting the way I'd been fighting, because I had nothing left. I'd depleted every reserve, exhausted every resource, spent every bit of energy, and I was losing anyway. I drove home in a daze. Lauren took one look at my face and knew something had shifted. We lost the case, I said. I'm sorry. She came and sat beside me on the couch. Are you okay? I don't know. Something happened in the parking lot. I think God spoke to me. What did he say? That my fight isn't mine, that it's his, and that I need to rest. Lauren was quiet for a moment. Then, David, I've been praying for months that God would help you see this, that you can't carry everything, that you were never meant to fight every battle alone. I don't know how to rest. I don't even know what that means. Maybe that's something you need to learn. Maybe this is God telling you that the way you've been living, fighting everything, controlling everything, never stopping, isn't his plan for you. I looked at my wife, this woman who'd been telling me for months what God had apparently just confirmed, and I realized she'd been seeing something I'd been too busy fighting to notice. I was exhausted, depleted, running on fumes, fighting battles on every front and losing most of them. And God was saying, stop. Your fight is not yours, it's mine. Rest. I didn't know what that would look like, didn't know how to implement it, didn't know what would happen if I actually stopped fighting and started resting. But I knew I couldn't keep going the way I'd been going. Something had to change, and that something apparently was me. I had to learn to stop fighting battles that were never mine to fight. I had to learn that rest wasn't weakness, it was trust. I had to learn that God had been fighting for me all along. I'd just been too busy fighting my own battles to let him. The journey ahead would challenge everything I'd believed about strength, control, and what it meant to be a man of faith. But in that moment, sitting on my couch with my wife, completely depleted from fighting battles that weren't mine to fight, I was ready to learn, ready to rest. Ready to discover what it meant to let God fight for me instead of constantly fighting for myself because I'd reached the end of my own strength. And maybe that's exactly where God needed me to be. The morning after God spoke to me in that parking lot, I woke up at 5 a.m. like I always did, ready to fight another day. My alarm hadn't even gone off. My body was just conditioned to wake up early, get ahead, start strategizing before anyone else was awake. But as I reached for my phone to check emails, I remembered the words, "Your fight is not yours, it is mine. Rest." I put the phone back down. Lauren stirred beside me. "You okay?" "I don't know. God told me to rest, but I don't know how to do that. Maybe start by not checking your emails at 5 a.m. It sounded so simple, but for me, it felt impossible. My mind was already racing through the day ahead. 3 client meetings, a deposition, the Bible study I hadn't prepared for, my son's soccer game I'd probably miss again. What if I just stayed in bed, I said, the words feeling foreign in my mouth. That would be a miracle, Lauren said, with a slight smile. So I did something I hadn't done in years. I stayed in bed, not sleeping. My mind was too active for that. But just lying there, not checking emails, not planning strategy, not fighting anything. It felt wrong, lazy, irresponsible. But I remembered, your fight is not yours. When I finally got up at 6:30, a full hour and a half later than usual, I felt guilty, like I'd wasted precious time, like I'd already lost battles I should have been fighting. Over breakfast, my kids noticed immediately. "Dad, you're still here?" My 10-year-old son Marcus said with genuine surprise. Usually I was gone before they woke up. "I'm still here. Are you sick?" "No, I'm trying something different. My 8-year-old daughter, Emma, looked at me suspiciously. "Are you going to yell at us about homework?" The question hit me hard. Was that what mornings had become? Me yelling about homework because I was stressed about getting to the office? "No yelling today," I said quietly. Lauren caught my eye across the table. She looked hopeful, like maybe, just maybe, something was actually changing. At the office, my assistant Jennifer did a double take when I walked in at 8 a.m. instead of my usual 6:30. "Everything okay?" she asked. "I'm trying to figure that out. Can you pull up my calendar for the next 2 weeks?" She brought up the schedule. It was color-coded chaos: meetings, depositions, court dates, client calls. Every hour blocked off. No white space, no room to breathe. "Cancel anything that's not absolutely critical," I said. Jennifer blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" "You heard me. Anything that can be rescheduled, reschedule it. Anything that someone else can handle, delegate it. I need space. David, you have 3 trials coming up in the next month. You can't just—" "I'm not canceling trials, but I am canceling things that don't need to be on my plate right now. Please, Jennifer, just do it." She looked concerned, but nodded. "Okay, but the partners are going to ask questions. Let them ask." Over the next few hours, as Jennifer worked through my calendar, I did something else I never did. I closed my office door and prayed. Not the quick utilitarian prayers I usually offered. "God, help me win this case," or "God, give me wisdom in this meeting," but real prayer, conversation. "God, I don't know what I'm doing. You said my fight isn't mine, that it's yours. But I don't understand what that means practically. I have cases. I have clients. I have responsibilities. How do I rest when there's so much that needs fighting?" I waited in the silence, and slowly a thought formed, not my own thought, but something deeper. What if the battles you're fighting aren't the ones I've called you to fight? The question stopped me cold. I thought about my calendar, all those meetings, cases, obligations. How many of them had I taken on because I thought I should, because I couldn't say no, because I'd built my identity on being the guy who could handle anything? How many of them were actually mine to fight? I pulled out a legal pad and started making 2 lists. One column, my battles, another column, not my battles. The exercise was revealing and painful. The Miller case, the one I'd lost yesterday. Was that actually my battle? Or had I taken it because a partner asked me to, even though I was already overextended? Not my battle. The church men's ministry I was leading. Was that my calling? Or had I volunteered because no one else would and I felt guilty? Not my battle. The financial stress I was fighting, was that actually a crisis? Or had I created pressure by trying to maintain a lifestyle that required me to work constantly? Maybe not my battle. By the time I finished, the Not My Battles column was 3 times longer than the My Battles column. I'd been fighting battles that were never mine to fight. And in doing so, I'd neglected the battles that actually were. My marriage, that was my battle. Not to fix Lauren or control the relationship, but to love her well, be present with her, build partnership. My kids, that was my battle. Not to mold them into perfect children through strict discipline, but to know them, guide them, show them what it means to trust God. My own relationship with God, that was my battle. And I'd been so busy fighting everyone else's battles that I'd neglected the one that mattered most. That evening I did something else unprecedented. I came home at 5:30 p.m. in time for dinner. On a Tuesday. Lauren actually gasped when I walked through the door. "Who are you and what have you done with my husband? I'm trying to figure out which battles are actually mine to fight." And I realized I've been fighting a lot of battles that aren't. We had dinner together, all 4 of us at the table, no phones, no TV, no distractions. When was the last time we'd done that? I couldn't remember. Marcus told me about his science project. Emma showed me a drawing she'd made. Lauren talked about her day, and I just listened. Didn't try to fix anything or solve anything or fight any battles. I just was present. After the kids went to bed, Lauren and I sat on the back porch with coffee. "I can see you're really trying," she said. But David, I'm also worried. You can't just abandon all your responsibilities. We have bills, you have cases. There are real obligations. I know. I'm not abandoning responsibilities. I'm trying to figure out which battles God is actually calling me to fight versus which ones I've taken on because I can't say no or because I've built my identity on being the guy who fights everything. That's a big shift. It has to be, because yesterday in that parking lot I had nothing left. I was completely depleted, and God told me my fight isn't mine, it's His, that I need to rest. Lauren, I've been fighting so hard for so long that I forgot what rest even feels like. So what does rest look like for you? I don't fully know yet, but I'm starting to understand it's not about doing nothing. It's about discernment, fighting the right battles instead of every battle, trusting that God is fighting for me instead of assuming I have to fight everything myself. That sounds like wisdom. It sounds terrifying, because my whole life, I've been the fighter, the one who never backs down. And now God is asking me to back down from battles that aren't mine and trust Him to fight them. Maybe that's what faith actually looks like. Not fighting harder, but trusting more. Her words settled over me like a blanket. Not fighting harder, but trusting more. That night I lay in bed and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not because all the battles were won or all the problems were solved, but because for the first time in a long time, I wasn't carrying everything. God had said, "Your fight is not yours, it is mine," and I was starting to believe Him. The next morning, I woke up naturally at 6:30, not from an alarm or from conditioned stress, but just waking up. I prayed before reaching for my phone. God, show me today which battles are mine and which aren't. Help me fight what You're calling me to fight and rest from what You're not. At the office, I had a meeting with the senior partners about my reduced schedule. I expected resistance, maybe even consequences. David, Jennifer said you've cleared a lot off your calendar. My managing partner, Richard, said, we're concerned about your commitment to the firm. Old me would have immediately gone into fight mode, defending myself, explaining, justifying, proving my value. But something had shifted. Richard, I'm absolutely committed to this firm, but I've been overextended and my work quality has suffered because of it. I'm not abandoning cases or shirking responsibilities. I'm being more strategic about which battles I take on so I can fight them well instead of fighting everything poorly. That's actually mature, Richard said, surprising me. We've noticed your win rate dropping. If focusing on fewer cases helps you be more effective, we support that. Just communicate with us. I will. As I left that meeting, I felt something unexpected. Relief. Not just because the conversation went well, but because I'd responded differently. I hadn't fought. I'd been honest, clear, and let the outcome be what it was. Maybe that's what it meant to let God fight for me. Not being passive, but being strategic. Not fighting everything, but discerning what was actually mine to fight. That Sunday at church, I resigned from leading the men's ministry. I've realized I took this on for the wrong reasons, I told the pastor. Not because God called me to it, but because no one else would do it and I felt guilty. And I've been doing it poorly because I don't have the capacity. You need someone who's actually called to this. The pastor nodded. I appreciate the honesty, David. And I think you're learning something important, that saying yes to everything means saying yes to nothing well. God doesn't call us to every battle. He calls us to specific ones. I'm starting to see that. Walking out of church that day, I felt lighter, like I'd put down weights I'd been carrying that were never meant to be mine. Lauren took my hand. You're different. It's only been 3 days, but you're different. I'm learning to rest, to trust that God is fighting battles I don't need to fight. It's the hardest thing I've ever done. Harder than trial law. So much harder, because it means letting go of control, admitting I'm not supposed to fight everything. Trusting God with outcomes I can't control. But you're doing it. I'm trying, one battle at a time, one moment of rest at a time. That evening, Marcus asked me to play catch in the backyard. Normally, I'd have said I was too busy or too tired. Instead, I said yes. As we threw the ball back and forth, my son asked, Dad, how come you're home more now? because I realized I was fighting too many battles that weren't mine to fight. And I was missing the ones that actually matter, like being here with you. I like you being here. Me too, buddy. Me too. Later, as I stood in the backyard after Marcus went inside, I looked up at the darkening sky and whispered, "Thank you for showing me that my fight isn't mine, for teaching me to rest, for fighting for me when I was too exhausted to fight anymore." The journey was just beginning. I still had so much to learn about which battles were mine and which weren't, about what rest really meant, about trusting God to fight instead of assuming I had to fight everything myself. But I'd taken the first steps. I'd started to rest, and in that rest, I was discovering something profound. God had been fighting for me all along. I'd just been too busy fighting my own battles to notice. 2 weeks after God spoke to me about rest, I faced my first real test, a case that every instinct told me to fight. But God was telling me to let go. The Peterson case, a wrongful termination lawsuit that had come to me through a friend. The client was a good man who'd been treated unfairly, and everything in me wanted to take it on and fight for justice. But when I prayed about it, really prayed, not just asked God to bless my decision, I felt a clear nudge. This isn't your battle. I sat in my office, staring at the case file, arguing with God in my head. But he needs help. He was wronged. Someone has to fight for him. Yes, that quiet voice responded, but not you. This isn't your battle to fight. Then who will fight it? I will, trust me. It went against everything in me. My entire career had been built on fighting for people who couldn't fight for themselves. How could I say no to someone who genuinely needed help? But I remembered the list I'd made, my battles versus not my battles, and I remembered God's words. Your fight is not yours, it is mine. I called the client and referred him to another attorney, someone with more capacity, someone for whom this actually was their battle to fight. I appreciate you thinking of me, Jim, but I'm not the right attorney for this case. However, I know someone who specializes in employment law and would be perfect. Let me connect you. After I hung up, I felt terrible, guilty, like I'd failed someone who needed me. Lauren found me that evening sitting on the back porch, staring at nothing. "What's wrong?" I told her about the Peterson case, about how hard it was to say no, about feeling like I'd abandoned someone who needed help. "But David, you didn't abandon him. You connected him with someone better equipped to help. That's not failure. That's wisdom." It feels like failure. It feels like I'm backing down from a fight. Or maybe it feels like you're learning discernment. There's a difference between backing down from a fight that's yours and declining a fight that was never yours to begin with. Her words hit home. I was learning, painfully, that not every battle that needed fighting was mine to fight, that saying no to one person's need didn't make me selfish or weak. It meant I was being strategic about where God was actually calling me to invest my energy. But God wasn't done teaching me. The next test came at church. Pastor Mike approached me after service with a request that would have been impossible for old David to refuse. "David, we're launching a new ministry to support men dealing with addiction. I immediately thought of you, your legal background, your leadership ability, your heart for helping people. Would you consider heading it up?" Everything in me wanted to say yes. This was important work. It mattered, and I had the skills to do it well. But I paused. I prayed, right there in the church lobby while Pastor Mike waited. "God, is this my battle?" The answer was immediate. "No, rest." "Pastor Mike, I appreciate you thinking of me. This is important work, but I need to be honest. I'm not the right person for this. I'm still learning how to discern which battles are mine and which aren't. And this one isn't mine." Pastor Mike looked surprised but nodded. "I respect that, David. That's actually more spiritual maturity than most people show. We'll find the right person." As I walked away, I felt something unexpected. Freedom, not guilt, not shame, not the weight of obligation. Just freedom. For the first time in my adult life, I'd said no to a legitimate need without feeling like a failure. That evening at home, something remarkable happened. Because I wasn't preparing for a ministry I'd just taken on, I actually had time to notice my family. Emma was doing homework at the kitchen table, struggling with a math problem. Normally, I'd either be too busy to notice or would swoop in with the answer, trying to fix it quickly so I could move on to the next thing. Instead, I pulled up a chair beside her. "Tell me what's confusing you," she explained, and I listened, really listened. Not to fix it quickly, but to understand where she was stuck. "Okay, let's work through it together. What do you think the first step should be?" We spent 20 minutes on that one problem, and by the end, she'd figured it out herself. "I did it," she said with genuine pride. "You did. I just sat here. But you helped, not by telling me the answer, but by helping me think through it." After she went to bed, Lauren came and found me. "Did you see Emma's face when she figured out that problem?" I did. That's what happens when you're present instead of just trying to fix everything. "David, you've been different these past 2 weeks. More peaceful, more here, even when you're here." "What's changing?" "I'm learning to rest. Not just physically, but mentally, emotionally, spiritually. I'm learning that I don't have to fight every battle, that God is fighting for me. And that when I stop trying to control and fix everything, I actually have space to be present." I love this version of you. I'm still learning. It's hard. Every day, there are battles I want to fight that God is telling me aren't mine. But I'm starting to see the fruit of obedience. When I rest from battles that aren't mine, I have energy for the ones that are. The biggest test came at the end of the second week. My managing partner, Richard, called me into his office. His face was serious. "David, we have a problem. The Brennan case, you know, the pharmaceutical litigation, it's falling apart. The lead attorney is overwhelmed and making mistakes. We need someone to step in and take over. Someone with your skills and experience." I knew the Brennan case. It was massive, potentially tens of millions of dollars for the firm. High profile, career-defining. Old David would have jumped at it. The challenge, the prestige, the chance to prove my value to the firm. "When do you need an answer?" I asked. "Today, honestly, the situation is urgent. Give me an hour." I went back to my office, closed the door, and prayed. "God, this is a big one. This could define my career at this firm. This could set up my family financially for years. But I need to know, is this my battle, or is this another fight that isn't mine?" I waited in the silence, and slowly, clarity came. Not the answer I wanted, but the answer I needed. "This isn't your battle, David. I know it looks like an opportunity, but it's a trap. It would pull you back into the pattern I'm trying to break you free from. Rest. Trust me to provide for your family in my way, not through you fighting battles that aren't yours." Daddy, I sat there, my legal mind trying to argue with God. "But the money, the career opportunity, the firm needs me. The firm will be fine, your family will be fine, but you won't be fine if you take this on, because it's not your battle, and fighting battles that aren't yours, no matter how important they seem, will destroy you. I'm teaching you to rest. Don't run back to exhaustion just because it's dressed up as opportunity." The clarity was undeniable, but accepting it was terrifying. I went back to Richard's office. "I can't take the Brennan case." He stared at me. "David, do you understand what you're saying? This is a career-making opportunity. Partners will remember who stepped up and who didn't." "I understand. But Richard, 2 weeks ago I was so burned out I was making mistakes. My win rate was dropping because I was overextended. If I take this case, I'll be right back where I started, fighting so many battles that I'm losing all of them. I need to focus on the cases I already have and do them well." "So, you're saying no to the biggest case the firm has?" "I'm saying it's not my battle to fight. You need someone with the capacity to give it their full attention. That's not me right now." Richard was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something that surprised me. "A year ago, you would have taken this case without hesitation, and you probably would have killed yourself trying to handle it on top of everything else." "I'm not happy you're saying no, David, but I respect that you know your limits. That's rare in this profession." As I walked out of his office, my hands were shaking. I'd just said no to a career-defining opportunity, and I had no idea if it was the right decision or if I'd just torpedoed my future at the firm. That night, I couldn't eat dinner, couldn't focus, couldn't stop second-guessing myself. "I think I just made the biggest mistake of my career," I told Lauren. She looked at me carefully. "Did you pray about it?" "Yes." "What did God say?" "That it wasn't my battle. That taking it would pull me back into the pattern He's trying to break me free from." "Then you didn't make a mistake. You made the right choice, even though it's scary. But what if God was wrong? What if I misheard? What if—" "David, stop. You're spiraling. You prayed, you listened, you obeyed. That's all God asks. Trust Him with the outcome." I tried to sleep, but couldn't. My mind kept running through scenarios. What if I got fired? What if the firm saw me as weak? What if I'd just destroyed everything I'd built over 15 years? Around 2 a.m. I got up and went to sit in the living room. And I prayed. Not the confident prayers I used to pray, but desperate, honest prayer. "God, I'm terrified. I said no to that case because I believed you told me to. But now I'm questioning everything. Did I hear you right? Did I make a mistake? What if my family suffers because I said no?" The response came gently but firmly. "David, this is exactly why I'm teaching you to rest. Because you've spent your whole life believing that your provision, your security, your success, all of it depends on you fighting harder. But it doesn't. It depends on me. I'm not asking you to stop working. I'm asking you to stop believing that the outcome depends on you fighting battles that aren't yours." "But what if we lose everything?" "You won't. But even if you did, would you have lost me? Would you have lost your family? Would you have lost what actually matters? David, I'm teaching you what real security is. Not the security that comes from winning every battle, but the security that comes from trusting the one who fights for you." I sat there in the dark, letting those words sink in. For 37 years, I'd believed my security came from being the best fighter, the strongest, the one who never backed down. But God was showing me that real security came from trust, from discernment, from fighting the right battles and resting from the wrong ones. The next morning, I woke up with a peace I couldn't explain. The circumstances hadn't changed. I'd still said no to a massive opportunity, but something in me had shifted. At breakfast, Marcus asked, "Dad, are you okay? You seem different." "I'm learning something, buddy. I'm learning that being strong doesn't mean fighting every battle. Sometimes it means trusting God enough to rest from battles that aren't yours." "That's confusing." "I know, but here's what it means practically. It means I'm home for dinner. It means I can help you with your homework. It means I can come to your soccer games because I'm not trying to fight everything anymore." Emma piped up, "I like you being home. You're less grumpy." "Less grumpy is good," Lauren said with a smile. That Sunday, Pastor Mike's sermon was on Exodus 14:14. "The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still." I'd heard that verse 100 times, but now it landed differently. The Israelites were trapped between the Egyptian army and the Red Sea, and God told them, "Don't fight, don't panic, don't strategize, just be still. Watch me fight for you." That's what God had been teaching me, not to stop working or caring or engaging, but to stop fighting battles that were His to fight. After church, I pulled Pastor Mike aside. "Thank you for that sermon. It's exactly what I needed to hear. God's timing is always perfect. How are you doing, David? I know you've been going through some changes. I'm learning to rest, to discern which battles are mine and which aren't. It's the hardest thing I've ever done, but I'm starting to see the fruit. That's the journey of faith, learning that we're not the ones holding everything together. God is. And when we realize that, we can finally rest." I drove home that afternoon, thinking about the past 2 weeks. I'd said no to multiple opportunities and obligations. I'd let go of battles I would have fought without question a month ago. And something remarkable had happened. My life hadn't fallen apart. My family was stronger. My marriage was better. My kids were more connected to me. The battles I thought I had to fight, God was handling them without me. And the battles that actually were mine, I was finally present enough to fight them well. That evening I sat on the back porch and prayed with gratitude. "God, 2 weeks ago you told me my fight wasn't mine. It was yours, and you told me to rest. I'm still learning what that means, but I'm starting to see it. Rest isn't laziness or irresponsibility. It's trust. It's discernment. It's recognizing that not every battle that needs fighting is mine to fight. Thank you for teaching me this, for breaking the pattern I've been in for 37 years, for showing me that real strength comes from trusting you, not from fighting everything myself. Keep teaching me. Keep showing me which battles are mine and which aren't. Keep helping me rest in you, because I'm discovering something profound. When I stop fighting your battles and focus on mine, everything changes. The battles you're calling me to, I fight them better, because I'm not exhausted from fighting everything else. And the battles that aren't mine, you handle them better than I ever could anyway. Thank you for rest. Thank you for teaching me to trust. Thank you for fighting for me. This journey is far from over, but I'm finally on the right path. The path of rest, the path of trust, the path of letting you fight for me. 2 weeks in, and I was just beginning to understand what God meant when he said, "Your fight is not yours, it is mine. Rest." But I was learning, one battle at a time, one moment of rest at a time, one act of trust at a time. 1 month after God spoke to me about rest, I discovered something surprising. Resting from battles that weren't mine didn't make my life easier. It made it harder in completely unexpected ways. The hardest part wasn't saying no to new battles. It was dealing with the fallout from people who didn't understand. It started with my father. Dad called me on a Saturday morning, his voice tight with frustration. "David, I need you to look at something. Your uncle's estate is a mess. The executor is making terrible decisions, and someone needs to step in legally before everything gets lost. I need you to handle this." Old David would have immediately said yes. Family was important. Dad needed help. This was clearly my responsibility, but I paused. I prayed, and I felt that now familiar nudge. "Not your battle. Dad, I can't take this on. I can refer you to someone who specializes in estate litigation, but this isn't something I can handle right now." The silence on the other end was heavy. "You can't, or you won't." "Dad, I'm learning to discern which battles are mine to fight and which aren't. I'm already at capacity with my cases and my family. Taking on Uncle Jim's estate would push me back into the pattern I'm trying to break free from." "Pattern? David, this is family. You don't say no to family." "I'm not saying no to family. I'm saying I'm not the right person to fight this particular battle. There are attorneys who can help better than I can. I'm disappointed in you, son. I raised you to step up when family needs you." The call ended shortly after that, and I sat there feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. Lauren found me staring at my phone. "What happened?" I told her about the call, about the disappointment in my father's voice, about feeling like I'd failed some fundamental test of character. "David, you didn't fail anything. You set a healthy boundary. Your dad is used to you always saying yes, always taking on everyone else's battles. He doesn't understand that you're changing because he hasn't seen what that pattern was doing to you." "But what if he's right? What if I'm just being selfish? What if learning to rest is just an excuse to avoid responsibility? Is that what God told you when you prayed about it?" "No, God clearly said it wasn't my battle." "Then trust that. Your father's disappointment doesn't change what God said." But the guilt lingered. I'd spent 37 years proving myself to my father, the former Marine, who'd taught me that real men never backed down from a fight, never said no when someone needed help, never showed weakness. Learning to rest meant disappointing the man whose approval I'd been seeking my entire life. The second confrontation came from an unexpected source, my friend Marcus from church. We met for coffee, something we'd been doing monthly for years, but this time Marcus had an agenda. "David, I need to talk to you about something. There's been concern about the changes in you." "What kind of concern?" "You've stepped back from a lot at church. You quit the men's ministry. You've turned down multiple opportunities to serve. People are starting to wonder if you're okay, if maybe you're having a crisis of faith or something." I felt anger rising. A crisis of faith? Marcus, I'm finally learning what faith actually means. It means trusting God to fight battles instead of assuming I have to fight everything myself. But David, the Bible calls us to serve, to not grow weary in doing good, to use our gifts for the kingdom. And you have gifts, leadership, wisdom, the ability to help people. When you pull back from serving, aren't you being disobedient? Is it disobedient to discern which battles God is actually calling me to fight? Marcus, a month ago I was doing so much serving that I was exhausted. My marriage was suffering. My kids barely knew me and I was burning out. Is that what God wants? For me to destroy myself in the name of service? I'm just saying, it looks like you're choosing comfort over sacrifice. His words stung. Because that's exactly what I'd been afraid of, that learning to rest would look like selfishness, that setting boundaries would be perceived as weakness. Marcus, I'm not choosing comfort. I'm choosing obedience. God told me to rest, to stop fighting battles that aren't mine. And yes, that means some legitimate needs aren't being met by me. But maybe, just maybe, God has other people he wants to raise up to meet those needs. Maybe my constant saying yes was preventing others from stepping into their calling. Marcus didn't look convinced. I hope you're right, David, I really do. But from the outside, it just looks like you're pulling away from the faith. After he left, I sat in that coffee shop feeling completely misunderstood. I was trying to obey God, trying to learn to rest, trying to fight only the battles he was calling me to fight. But to everyone else, it looked like I was giving up, backing down, choosing selfishness over service. That evening I was quieter than usual at dinner. "Dad, are you sad?" Emma asked with a child's direct perception. "I'm processing some things, sweetheart." "Did someone make you sad?" "Not exactly. I'm just learning that when you change, not everyone understands, and that's hard." After the kids went to bed, I told Lauren about the conversation with Marcus. "He thinks I'm having a crisis of faith, that I'm being disobedient by resting instead of serving." Lauren was quiet for a moment, then, "David, Jesus rested. He withdrew from crowds. He said no to people who wanted his help. He let opportunities pass because he was only doing what the Father told him to do." Was Jesus having a crisis of faith? Was he being disobedient? Her words hit me like a revelation. Jesus, the Son of God, modeled exactly what God was teaching me. Strategic ministry, discernment about which battles to fight, regular rest and withdrawal, saying no even to legitimate needs because they weren't what the Father was calling him to. If Jesus did that, how could I be wrong for doing the same? "I needed to hear that," I said. "You're not being selfish, David. You're being obedient. And the fact that people don't understand, that's not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to obey what God is telling you." But the challenges kept coming. At work, I'd turned down the Brennan case, and word had spread. Some colleagues respected it. Others saw it as a lack of ambition. One partner, Stephen, cornered me in the break room. "Harrison, what's going on with you? You turned down the biggest case the firm's had in years. You're leaving at 5:30 every day. You've cut back your caseload. Are you looking to leave? Because if you're not committed to this firm—" "I'm absolutely committed, Stephen, but I'm also committed to doing excellent work. And I can't do excellent work when I'm overextended. I'd rather handle 6 cases well than 12 cases poorly. That's not how you make partner. Maybe not, but it's how you stay human." Stephen shook his head and walked away. That night, I lay awake, worrying. What if my career really was over? What if learning to rest meant professional suicide? What if everyone was right and I was making a terrible mistake? Around midnight, I got up and went to sit in the living room. I opened my Bible, something I'd been doing more regularly since learning to rest, and found myself in Matthew 11:28-30. "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." I read those words over and over. Jesus offering rest, saying his burden was light. How had I missed this for so long? I'd been carrying burdens that were crushing me, burdens Jesus never asked me to carry, fighting battles that weren't mine, taking on yokes that weren't his. And he was offering something different: rest, a light burden, an easy yoke. But to accept it, I had to let go of all the heavy burdens I'd been carrying, all the battles I'd been fighting, all the approval I'd been seeking from people who didn't understand. I prayed honestly, God, this is harder than I thought. Everyone thinks I'm wrong. My dad is disappointed. My friend thinks I'm having a crisis of faith. My colleagues think I'm not ambitious enough, and part of me wonders if they're all right. But you said my fight wasn't mine. You said to rest, and I'm trying to obey. But it's costing me people's respect, professional opportunities, relationships. I need to know, am I doing this right? Or have I misunderstood what you were telling me? The answer came gently but clearly. David, you're doing exactly what I called you to do. But understand this. When you stop living for people's approval and start living for my approval, some people won't understand. Some will be disappointed. Some will judge you. That's not your responsibility. Your responsibility is obedience. Not everyone understanding, not everyone approving, not everyone agreeing. Just obedience. I didn't call you to fight every battle. I called you to fight the ones I assign you. And part of learning that is accepting that people who are still fighting every battle won't understand why you're not. The words settled over me like peace. I couldn't control what people thought of me. I couldn't make them understand. I couldn't earn their approval by explaining myself better. I could only obey what God had told me and trust that he would handle the rest. The next morning at breakfast, I was different, lighter. Lauren noticed immediately. You seem better. What happened? I realized something. I've been trying to make everyone understand why I'm changing, trying to justify my decisions, trying to prove I'm not being selfish or having a crisis of faith. But that's just another battle I'm not supposed to fight. What do you mean? People are going to think what they think. My dad might stay disappointed. Marcus might keep thinking I'm wrong. My colleagues might see me as less ambitious. But I can't fight those battles. I can't convince everyone. All I can do is obey what God told me and trust him with people's opinions. That's freedom. It is. And it's terrifying, because I've spent my whole life fighting for people's approval, proving myself, making sure everyone saw me as strong and capable and committed. But God is asking me to let that go, to care more about his approval than theirs. That week, I had a conversation that shifted everything. An older attorney at the firm, Gerald, who was semi-retired but still came in occasionally, asked me to lunch. I've been watching you these past few weeks, he said, the changes you've been making, and I wanted to tell you something. I braced myself for another lecture about ambition or commitment. 30 years ago, I was you, taking every case, working every hour, fighting every battle. I thought that's what success looked like. And you know what happened? What? I won, became partner, made a lot of money, built a reputation as one of the best litigators in the city, and in the process I destroyed my marriage, alienated my kids, and had a heart attack at 45. He paused, letting that sink in. I survived the heart attack, but by then my wife had left. My kids barely spoke to me. And I realized I'd won every professional battle and lost every personal one that mattered. David, I see you making different choices, saying no to battles that would build your career but cost you your family, setting boundaries that confuse people who measure success by billable hours. And I want you to know, you're doing the right thing. Don't let anyone tell you different. I felt tears in my eyes. Thank you, I needed to hear that. The partners who are questioning your commitment, most of them are miserable. Divorced, estranged from their kids, taking medication for stress-related illness. Is that the success you want? No! Then keep doing what you're doing. Fight the battles that matter. Rest from the ones that don't. And trust that God knows what he's doing. That conversation was like water in a desert. After days of criticism and misunderstanding, someone finally got it. Someone who'd walked the path I'd been on and could see where it led. That night, I gathered my family for dinner and did something I'd never done before. I apologized. Marcus, Emma, I want to say I'm sorry for the years I wasn't really present, for all the times I chose fighting someone else's battle over being with you, for building my life around work and service and everyone else's needs while neglecting the people who actually mattered most. Marcus, my 10-year-old, said, "It's okay, Dad. You're different now. You're here more. And you're not always stressed. That's because I'm learning something God is teaching me, that not every battle is mine to fight. That rest isn't weakness, it's trust. And that you guys, this family, you're the battles that are actually mine, the ones worth fighting for." Emma hugged me. "I like the new you, Daddy." "Me too, sweetheart. Me too." Later, Lauren and I sat on the back porch in comfortable silence. "1 month," she said. 1 month since God told you to rest. And look how much has changed. It's been harder than I expected, dealing with people's disappointment and misunderstanding. But it's also been worth it. Completely. Our marriage is better. I'm more present with the kids. I'm doing better work because I'm not overextended. And I have peace, real peace, for the first time in years. Because you're fighting the right battles now. Exactly. And resting from the wrong ones. I looked up at the stars and prayed silently. Thank you, God, for teaching me to rest, for showing me that my fight isn't mine, it's yours, for giving me courage to say no, even when people don't understand. 1 month in, and I'm still learning, still facing criticism, still having moments of doubt. But I know I'm on the right path, because my life is better, my family is stronger, my soul is at peace. That's worth more than any professional success or anyone's approval. Keep teaching me. Keep showing me which battles are mine and which aren't. Because I'm discovering something profound. When I fight only the battles you call me to, I actually win the ones that matter. And that's the only victory that counts. 1 month after learning to rest, the journey was far from over. But I was no longer fighting alone. God was fighting for me. And that changed everything. 6 weeks after God spoke to me about rest, I faced a battle I couldn't avoid, one that actually was mine to fight. And it taught me something crucial. Resting from wrong battles gives you strength for the right ones. It started with a phone call from my son's school. "Mr. Harrison, this is Principal Davis. We need to meet about Marcus. There's been an incident, and we need to discuss some concerning behavior patterns we've been seeing." My heart sank. Marcus, my 10-year-old who'd been so excited that I was home more, who'd told me he liked the new me. The meeting was scheduled for the next afternoon. Lauren and I sat across from Principal Davis and Marcus's teacher, Mrs. Anderson. "Marcus has been getting into fights," Principal Davis said. 3 incidents in the past 2 weeks. He's also been disruptive in class, disrespectful to teachers, and his grades have dropped significantly. I looked at Marcus's teacher. "Why weren't we notified earlier?" Mrs. Anderson looked uncomfortable. "We did send emails and made several phone calls." My stomach dropped. The emails I'd been ignoring because I was resting from battles that weren't mine. The calls I'd let go to voicemail because I was setting boundaries. I didn't see them, I admitted. I've been making changes to how I manage my time, and I must have missed the communications. Lauren's hand tightened on mine. She was being supportive, but I could feel the question underneath. How did we miss this? "We need to implement a behavior plan," Principal Davis said. "And we strongly recommend family counseling. Something is clearly going on with Marcus that needs to be addressed." After the meeting, Lauren and I sat in the car in the parking lot. "I thought I was being a better father," I said, my voice breaking. "I've been home more, I've been present. How did I miss that Marcus was struggling?" "You've been present physically," Lauren said gently. "But David, have you really been seeing him? Or have you been so focused on learning to rest that you've missed what's actually happening?" Her words cut deep because they were true. I'd been home more, but had I been truly present? Or had I been so consumed with my own journey of learning to rest that I'd missed my son's cry for help? That evening I knocked on Marcus's bedroom door. "Can we talk, buddy?" He shrugged, not looking at me. I sat on the edge of his bed. Your principal told me about the fights and the trouble in class. Marcus, what's going on? Silence. I'm not here to yell or punish. I just want to understand. More silence. Then quietly, you wouldn't get it. Try me. He finally looked up, and I saw tears in his eyes. You're always here now, but you're not really here. You sit at dinner, but you're thinking about work. You help with homework, but I can tell you're distracted. You're in the house, but you're not with us. His words hit me like a physical blow. And the worst part? You used to be gone all the time, but at least I knew why. You were working, fighting for clients, being important. But now you're here and you're still not really with us. So what's the point? I felt tears streaming down my face. Marcus, I'm so sorry. You're absolutely right. I thought being home more automatically meant being present. But I've been so focused on my own journey, learning to rest, figuring out which battles are mine, that I missed the most important battle of all, being truly present with you and your sister. I don't need you to be perfect, Dad. I just need you to see me, to really see me, not just be in the same room. We talked for an hour, really talked. Marcus told me about a kid at school who'd been bullying him, about feeling like he wasn't good at anything, about being angry all the time and not knowing why. And I listened, really listened, not planning my response or trying to fix it, just being present with my son in his pain. Marcus, I'm going to do better, not just be home more, but really be here. And we're going to work through this together. The bullying, the anger, all of it. But I need you to help me. Tell me when I'm physically present, but not really there, okay? Okay, Dad. After Marcus went to sleep, I sat with Lauren in the living room. I thought I was doing the right thing, learning to rest, setting boundaries, fighting only the battles God called me to. But I missed that this, Marcus, our kids, our family, this is the battle I'm supposed to be fighting, and I've been losing it. You haven't been losing it, Lauren said, but you're right that you've been missing something. David, rest isn't just about saying no to wrong battles. It's about having the energy and presence to fight the right ones well. And our kids, they're absolutely the right battle. I thought physical presence was enough. I thought being home for dinner and playing catch meant I was engaged. It's a start. But David, real presence means being emotionally available, mentally engaged, seeing what's actually happening instead of just checking the present father box. That night, I prayed with more honesty than I had in weeks. God, I thought I was learning what you were teaching me. But I missed something crucial. I rested from wrong battles, but didn't fully engage in the right ones. I was home more, but I wasn't truly present. Marcus is struggling and I didn't see it, because I was so focused on my own journey that I stopped really seeing my kids. Teach me what real presence means. Not just physical location, but emotional availability, mental engagement, really seeing and knowing my children. This is my battle. Help me fight it well. The next day, I did something radical. I cleared my entire Saturday schedule. No cases to review, no emails to catch up on, no church obligations, just Marcus. Hey, buddy, what do you want to do today? Just you and me. Your choice. His eyes widened. Anything? Anything. We ended up at an arcade, then lunch at his favorite burger place, then a movie he'd been wanting to see. 6 hours of just being with my son. No distractions, no phone, no thinking about work or rest or battles, just presence. During lunch, Marcus said something that broke my heart and gave me hope at the same time. Dad, this is the best day I've had in forever. Not because of what we're doing, but because you're actually here, like really here, I can tell. What's the difference? How can you tell? You're looking at me when I talk. You're laughing at my jokes. You're not checking your phone every 5 minutes. You're just here, and out of the mouths of children. I thought I was present because I was physically there, but presence required so much more than location. It required attention, engagement, really seeing and hearing the person in front of you. That week, I made another change. Every day after work, I had a 30-minute connection time with each kid individually. With Marcus, we'd shoot basketball in the driveway or play video games. With Emma, We draw or read together, no agenda. No trying to teach or correct or improve, just being present. And something remarkable happened. Marcus started opening up about the bullying, about his feelings, about things that were bothering him that he'd been holding inside. The kid who's been bullying me, his name is Tyler. He says I'm weak because I don't fight back. Old me would have immediately jumped to solving mode. Here's what you need to do. Here's how you handle bullies. Let me call the school. Abridi. But I'd learned something about fighting battles. Sometimes the most powerful way to fight is simply to be present. That must be really hard. Tell me more about Tyler. And Marcus did. We talked through it over several days, and together, really together, we came up with a plan. We involved his teacher, we practiced responses, we worked with the school counselor. But more importantly, Marcus felt heard, seen, supported, and the fighting stopped. Not because I'd swooped in and solved it for him, but because he had the emotional support he needed to handle it himself. 2 weeks after the principal meeting, Mrs. Anderson sent an email that made me cry. Mr. Harrison, I wanted to let you know that Marcus has shown remarkable improvement. His behavior in class has been excellent. He's been respectful and engaged, and his grades are coming back up. More importantly, he seems happier. Whatever you and Mrs. Harrison are doing at home, please keep doing it. It's working. I showed the email to Lauren that evening. You fought the right battle, she said, not by fixing Marcus or controlling his behavior, but by being truly present with him, by seeing him, and that gave him what he actually needed. I'm learning that fighting the right battles doesn't always look like fighting. Sometimes it looks like presence, like attention, like listening. Exactly. And you can only do that when you're not exhausted from fighting wrong battles. That Sunday, I had coffee with Gerald, the older attorney who'd encouraged me weeks earlier. How's the journey going? He asked. I told him about Marcus, about missing the signs, about learning that rest wasn't just about saying no, but about having energy for yes, for the battles that truly mattered. That's wisdom, Gerald said. When I was in the thick of my career, I told myself I was providing for my family by working constantly. But you know what my kids needed? Not the money I was earning or the success I was building. They needed me, present, engaged, seeing them. And by the time I figured that out, they were grown and distant. You're figuring it out while your kids are still young enough for it to matter. That's a gift. It's a gift I almost missed. I was so focused on learning to rest that I forgot why rest matters, so you have energy and presence for what actually counts. The battles that are actually yours, Gerald said. Exactly. That evening, we had a family meeting, something we'd started doing weekly. I want to tell you guys something, I said to Marcus and Emma. A few months ago, God taught me that I was fighting too many battles, that I needed to rest and only fight the battles He was calling me to. And I've been learning what that means. But I made a mistake. I thought rest was the goal, but it's not. Rest is the means to something else. Having the energy and presence to fight the right battles well. And you too, our family, you're the most important battle I have. Not a battle against you, but for you. Fighting to be the dad you need. Fighting to really see you and know you and be present with you. Emma hugged me. I like having you here, Daddy. Really here. Marcus nodded. Me too, Dad. And thanks for today, for really listening about Tyler and not just trying to fix it. Later that night, I reflected on 6 weeks of learning to rest. The journey had been harder than I expected. I'd faced disappointment from my father, misunderstanding from friends, skepticism from colleagues, but I'd also discovered something profound. Rest wasn't about doing nothing. It was about discerning what mattered and giving those things my full presence. The battles I'd let go of, the cases I'd turned down, the ministry opportunities I'd declined, the obligations I'd released, none of them had been the disasters I'd feared. Other attorneys had handled the cases. Other people had stepped up to serve. The world had continued without me fighting every battle. And in the space created by that rest, I'd been able to fight the battles that actually were mine. My marriage. Lauren and I were connecting in ways we hadn't in years. Not because I was doing elaborate date nights or following marriage advice, but because I had the emotional energy to actually be present with her. My kids. Marcus was thriving because I'd finally seen he was struggling and engaged in his battle with him. Emma was flourishing because she had a dad who actually noticed her drawings and listened to her stories. My work. I was winning more cases with fewer hours because I wasn't exhausted. My win rate was actually improving because I was strategic instead of scattered. My faith, I was growing spiritually because I had time to actually pray, read scripture, sit in God's presence without always rushing to the next thing. All of this because I'd learned to rest from battles that weren't mine so I could fight the ones that were. That night I prayed with deep gratitude. God, 6 weeks ago you told me my fight wasn't mine. It was yours, and you told me to rest. I'm still learning what that means, but I'm starting to understand. Rest isn't laziness or avoidance. It's strategic engagement. It's discerning what's actually mine and giving those things my full presence. Thank you for teaching me this through Marcus, through almost missing that he was struggling because I was so focused on my own journey. Thank you for showing me that rest isn't the goal. Presence is, and rest makes presence possible. I'm fighting fewer battles than I was 6 weeks ago, but the ones I'm fighting, my marriage, my kids, my relationship with you, the work you've actually called me to, I'm fighting them better, with more energy, more focus, more actual presence, and that's making all the difference. Keep teaching me, keep showing me what's mine and what's not. Keep helping me rest so I can be present where it matters. Because I'm discovering that when I fight only the battles you've called me to, I have everything I need to fight them well. Not because I'm stronger or smarter or more capable, but because you're fighting with me, for me, through me. And when you fight my battles, victory is possible. Thank you for rest. Thank you for presence. Thank you for teaching me the difference between being busy and being engaged. Thank you for Marcus and the wake-up call his struggle gave me. Thank you for showing me that the right battles aren't always the ones that seem most important or urgent. Sometimes the right battle is just sitting with your son in his bedroom, listening to his hurt, being present in his pain. And that presence, that simple, full presence, changes everything. Keep teaching me to rest so I can be present. Because presence is the most powerful way to fight the battles that matter. And those are the only battles worth fighting. 6 weeks in, the journey of learning to rest was far from over. But I'd learned something crucial. Rest and fight weren't opposites. Rest made fight possible. When I rested from wrong battles, I had strength for right ones. And the right battles, fought with full presence instead of exhausted obligation, those were the ones I could actually win, not through my own strength, but through God's, fighting alongside me in the battles that were truly mine. 3 months after God spoke to me about rest, I faced a situation that would test everything I'd learned, a professional crisis that threatened my entire career, and God's clear instruction to do nothing. It started with an email from the State Bar Association. One of my former clients had filed a formal complaint against me, alleging malpractice. The case in question was one I'd handled 2 years ago, before I'd learned to discern which battles were mine. I'd been overextended, juggling too many cases, and apparently I'd missed a critical filing deadline. The case had been dismissed, and my client had lost a significant settlement opportunity. The complaint sought disciplinary action, potentially including suspension of my license to practice law. I read the email 3 times, my hands shaking. This wasn't just about one case or one client. This could destroy my entire career, everything I'd built over 15 years. My first instinct was to fight hard, immediately, get the best attorney, build an aggressive defense, work around the clock to protect myself. But then I remembered, your fight is not yours, it is mine. Rest. I closed my laptop and prayed. God, this is bad. This could end my career. This could affect my ability to provide for my family. Every instinct is telling me to fight this with everything I have. What do I do? The answer came clearly. Rest. Trust me. This battle is mine. But God, if I don't fight this, if I don't hire the best attorney and mount an aggressive defense, I could lose everything. You won't lose everything. You might lose your law license. But that's not everything. And David, I'm asking you, will you trust me even with this, even when the stakes are this high? I sat there, wrestling with God. This was different from turning down cases or setting boundaries. This was my entire livelihood, my identity, my ability to support my family. And God was telling me to rest, to trust Him to fight this battle. That evening I told Lauren about the complaint. "Oh, David," she said, her face going pale, "this is serious." "I know, and God is telling me not to fight it." She looked at me carefully. "What do you mean?" "I mean, every instinct is telling me to hire an attorney, build a defense, work day and night to fight this. But when I prayed about it, God told me to rest, that this battle is His. David, I've supported you learning to rest and trust God, but this could destroy your career. Are you sure you're hearing Him right?" "I'm terrified that I'm not." "But Lauren, for 3 months, I've been learning to discern which battles are mine and which aren't. And I've seen God be faithful over and over when I've trusted Him. I think this is the ultimate test. Will I trust Him even with the thing I'm most afraid of losing?" What does resting look like in this situation? You can't just ignore a bar complaint. No, I'll respond. I'll be truthful and take responsibility for the mistake I made. But I won't wage war. I won't spend every waking hour obsessing over strategy. I won't let this consume me the way I would have 3 months ago. I'm going to do what's required and then trust God with the outcome. Lauren was quiet for a long moment. "That's either the most mature faith I've ever seen or the most foolish decision you've ever made." "I know, and I won't know which until it's over." Over the next week, I did exactly what I'd said. I drafted a response to the bar complaint. I took full responsibility for missing the deadline. I explained the circumstances, being overextended, taking on more cases than I could handle well. I outlined the changes I'd made since then, and then I submitted it and let it go. My partners at the firm were less understanding. Richard called me into his office. "David, I heard about the bar complaint. This is serious. We need to mount a strong defense. I've already contacted the best legal ethics attorney in the state." "I appreciate that, Richard, but I'm not going to fight this aggressively. I made a mistake. I'm taking responsibility for it, and I'm trusting that the bar will see the changes I've made and respond appropriately." "You're trusting? David, you could lose your license." "I know, but I've learned something over the past 3 months. Fighting every battle with everything I have, that's what got me into this mess in the first place. I was so overextended that I made a critical error. If I respond to that error by going into full battle mode again, I've learned nothing. So you're just going to let whatever happens happen?" "I'm going to do what's required, tell the truth, and trust God with the outcome." Yes, Richard shook his head. "I hope you know what you're doing. So do I." The hardest part was the waiting. The bar investigation would take months. During that time, I had to continue working, continue living, continue being present with my family, all while this threat hung over my head. Every day, I had to actively choose not to obsess over it, not to spend hours researching similar cases and their outcomes, not to rehearse my defense over and over in my mind. I had to rest. While everything in me wanted to fight, Marcus noticed one evening at dinner, "Dad, you seem worried." I'd been trying to hide it, but kids see more than we think. "I am worried, buddy. There's something happening at work that could affect my job, and it's teaching me to trust God even when I'm scared." "Are you going to fight it?" he asked. "Like you used to fight everything?" His question stopped me, because he'd been paying attention to my journey too. "No, I'm going to trust God to fight it for me. That doesn't mean I'm doing nothing. I've taken responsibility and done what I need to do. But I'm not going to let it consume me. I'm not going to stop being present with you guys just because I'm worried about work." "Good," Emma said matter-of-factly. "I like you better when you're here with us instead of always fighting." Out of the mouths of children again. 2 months into the investigation, I got a call from my former client, the one who'd filed the complaint. "Mr. Harrison, this is Stephen Mitchell. I wanted to talk to you about the bar complaint." My heart started racing. "Okay, I've been thinking a lot about it, and I read your response, how you took responsibility, how you explained what was going on in your life at the time. And honestly, your response made me rethink my own role in this." "What do you mean?" "I knew you were handling a lot of cases. I knew you were stretched thin, but I kept pushing you to do more, move faster, handle everything. And when things went wrong, I blamed you entirely. But reading your response, how you've changed, how you work, how you've learned to set better boundaries, I realized I was part of the problem too. Stephen, I made the mistake. Missing that deadline was my responsibility." "Yes, but Mr. Harrison, I'm calling to withdraw the complaint. I don't think you should lose your license over this. You made a mistake, yes, but you've owned it and changed because of it. That's more than most people do." After we hung up, I sat in my office in complete shock. Stephen was withdrawing the complaint. The threat to my license was gone because I'd rested instead of fighting, because I'd taken responsibility instead of mounting an aggressive defense, because I'd trusted God to fight for me. I called Lauren immediately. "Stephen Mitchell just called. He's withdrawing the complaint." She was crying. "David, God really did fight for you." He did. "And Lauren, if I'd responded the way I would have 3 months ago, if I'd hired an attorney and mounted an aggressive defense and gone to war, I don't think this would have happened." Stephen specifically said my response, the way I took responsibility and explained my changes, is what made him reconsider. God knew what he was doing. He did. And I almost didn't trust him. I almost fought this battle myself. That evening I gathered my family for a special dinner. "I want to tell you guys something important. You know I've been worried about something at work, something that could have affected my job. Well, today that situation resolved, and it resolved because I didn't fight it the way I used to fight everything." "What happened?" Marcus asked. "A client was upset with me because I made a mistake on his case a couple of years ago, and he filed a complaint that could have taken away my ability to be a lawyer. The old me would have fought that with everything. Hired expensive attorneys, worked day and night on my defense, treated it like a war. But God told me to rest, to trust Him to fight for me. So I took responsibility for my mistake, explained how I've changed, and then I let it go. I trusted God with the outcome. And today the client called and withdrew the complaint." "No, because you didn't fight?" Emma asked, confused. "Because I fought differently, not with aggression and defensiveness, but with honesty and humility, and that made all the difference." "So God did fight for you," Marcus said. "Like you've been teaching us. You were still and God fought." "Exactly, buddy, exactly." Later that night, Lauren and I sat on the back porch, a ritual that had become sacred to us over these 3 months. "I was terrified," she admitted. "When you said God was telling you not to fight the complaint, I thought you were making a terrible mistake. But you weren't. God really did know what He was doing. I was terrified too. And there were so many moments I almost gave in and hired an attorney and went to war. But every time I prayed about it, God kept saying the same thing. This battle is mine. Rest. Trust me." "What if Stephen hadn't withdrawn the complaint? What if you'd lost your license?" "I've thought about that a lot, and honestly, I think I'd still be okay. Not happy about it, but okay. Because I've learned over these 3 months that my identity isn't in being a lawyer. It's not in winning every battle. It's in being God's child and trusting Him. If I'd lost my license, it would have been hard, but it wouldn't have been the end of the world. God would have provided another path, and I would have had the peace of knowing I'd obeyed Him. That's real faith. It's the faith I've been learning. Not faith that God will always give me the outcome I want, but faith that He's trustworthy even when He doesn't. Faith that His ways are better than mine, even when they don't make sense to me." The next Sunday, Pastor Mike preached on 2 Chronicles 20, the story of King Jehoshaphat facing a massive army. Notice what God tells Jehoshaphat. Pastor Mike said. You will not have to fight this battle. Take up your positions, stand firm, and see the deliverance the Lord will give you. Now, God doesn't tell them to do nothing. He tells them to take their positions, to show up, to be ready, but not to fight, because this battle wasn't theirs, it was God's. And when they obeyed, when they stood firm and watched instead of fighting, God caused the enemy armies to destroy each other, complete victory without Jehoshaphat's army lifting a sword. Sometimes God calls us to fight. But sometimes, maybe more often than we think, He calls us to position ourselves, stand firm, and watch Him fight for us. The sermon felt like it was written specifically for me. I'd positioned myself by responding honestly to the bar complaint. I'd stood firm by not giving in to fear and panic. And then I'd watched God fight for me in a way I never could have fought for myself. After church, several people approached me. Apparently word had spread about the bar complaint and its resolution. David, I heard what happened. That took incredible faith. I've been watching your journey these past months, learning to rest instead of fighting everything. It's been challenging me to look at my own life. Would you be willing to share your story with our men's group? I think a lot of guys need to hear this. I agreed to speak at the men's group the following week, and as I prepared, I realized how much I'd learned in just 3 months. When I spoke to the group, I was honest about the journey, the initial panic when God told me to rest, the battles I'd let go of that I thought would be disasters, the criticism and misunderstanding from people who didn't get it, almost missing that Marcus was struggling, and finally, the bar complaint that had tested everything I'd learned. I'm not telling you to be passive or irresponsible, I said. God isn't calling us to do nothing, but He is calling us to discernment, to distinguish between battles that are ours to fight and battles that are His. And when a battle is His, He's calling us to rest, not in laziness, but in trust. For me, learning to rest has meant saying no to cases I would have taken, declining ministry opportunities that seemed important, setting boundaries that disappointed people, and most recently trusting God with a professional crisis instead of fighting it with everything I had. And in every single case, God has been faithful. Not always in the ways I expected, not always with the outcomes I hoped for, but faithful, proving over and over that when I rest and trust Him to fight, He does it better than I ever could. After I spoke, a man named Robert approached me. Everything you described, that's me right now. I'm fighting on every front, work, home, church, finances. I'm exhausted, and I don't know how to stop. We talked for an hour. I shared practical steps. Start by praying about every new opportunity or obligation before saying yes. Make a list of current battles and ask God which ones are actually yours. Start saying no to things that aren't your battles, even when it's hard. Focus your energy on being truly present in the battles that are yours. It's going to be uncomfortable, I told him. People won't understand. Some will be disappointed. You'll question whether you're doing the right thing. But Robert, I promise you, learning to fight only the battles God assigns you is worth every uncomfortable moment. As I drove home that night, I reflected on 3 months of transformation. I'd lost some things, professional opportunities, some people's approval, the false security that came from believing I could control everything by fighting hard enough. But I'd gained so much more. A stronger marriage, connected relationships with my kids, peace that didn't depend on circumstances, and faith, real faith, that God was trustworthy even when life felt out of control. Most importantly, I'd learned what it meant to rest, not just physically but spiritually, to trust that God was fighting for me even when I couldn't see how, to believe that His ways were better than mine even when they didn't make sense. That night, I prayed with a depth of gratitude I'd never experienced. God, 3 months ago, you spoke 5 words that changed my life. Your fight is not yours. And then you added, it is mine. Rest. I fought you on it at first. I didn't understand. I thought rest meant irresponsibility or laziness or giving up. But you've shown me that rest is trust, it's discernment, it's fighting only the battles you call me to and trusting you with the rest. Thank you for teaching me this through every situation, through cases I turned down that worked out fine, through ministry I declined that others stepped up to fill, through Marcus's struggle that taught me about real presence, and through the bar complaint that could have destroyed my career, but instead became a testimony to your faithfulness. I'm not the same person I was 3 months ago. I'm more at peace, more present, more trusting, not because circumstances are perfect, but because I've learned that you really do fight for me. Thank you for rest. Thank you for teaching me that my fight isn't mine. Thank you for proving over and over that when I trust you to fight, you do it better than I ever could. Keep teaching me. Keep showing me which battles are mine and which are yours. Keep helping me rest in you. Because I've learned something profound. You don't need my help to win battles. You need my trust, my surrender, my willingness to position myself and stand firm and watch you work. And when I give you that, when I truly rest and trust, you do immeasurably more than I could ask or imagine. Thank you for fighting for me, for being faithful when I trusted you with everything I was afraid of losing. Thank you for rest, true, deep, soul-level rest that comes from knowing the battle isn't mine. It's yours, and you've already won. 3 months in, and the transformation continued, but I'd learned the secret. Rest wasn't weakness, it was faith. And faith, real, tested, proven faith, changed everything. 6 months after God spoke to me about rest, I discovered something unexpected. The hardest battles to surrender weren't the professional ones or the church obligations. They were the ones closest to my heart. It started with my father. Dad had been distant since I'd refused to handle Uncle Jim's estate 6 months earlier. We'd talked occasionally, but the warmth was gone. The disappointment lingered in every conversation. Then he called with news that changed everything. "David, I need to tell you something. I've been diagnosed with cancer, stage 3 colon cancer. The doctors say with treatment I have a decent chance, but it's going to be a fight." My world tilted. My father, the Marine who taught me that real men never back down, never show weakness, had cancer. "Dad, I'm so sorry. What do you need? What can I do?" "I need you to help me fight this. Research the best doctors. Find clinical trials. Help me build a battle plan. David, I taught you to be a fighter. Now I need you to fight this with me." Every fiber of my being wanted to say yes. This was my father. This was life or death. This was the moment to show up and fight with everything I had. But as I hung up the phone, I felt God's familiar nudge. "This isn't your battle to fight." I wanted to scream. How could my father's cancer not be my battle? How could I rest when he was fighting for his life? I went into the garage, the only place I could be alone, and I argued with God. "This is my father. You're telling me to just do nothing while he has cancer? What kind of son does that? What kind of man?" The response was gentle but firm. "I'm not telling you to do nothing. I'm telling you that your role isn't to wage war against his cancer. Your role is to be his son, to be present, to love him. But the battle for his life, that's mine, not yours. But he's asking me to fight with him. He's asking you to be who you used to be, the fighter who tried to control everything. But David, you're not that person anymore. And if you go back to that, even for your father, you'll lose everything you've learned. Then what do I do? Be present. Love him, support him, pray for him, but don't try to orchestrate his healing. Don't try to control the outcome. Trust me with his life, just like you've learned to trust me with yours." I sat on the garage floor and cried, because God was asking me to trust him with the thing I loved most, my father's life. That evening, I called Dad back. "I've been thinking about what you said, about needing me to fight this with you, and Dad, I love you. I'm going to be there for you through all of this, but I can't be the fighter you're asking me to be." The silence on the other end was heavy. "What are you saying? That you won't help me?" "I'm saying I'll help in every way I can. I'll go to appointments with you. I'll be there after treatments. I'll do whatever practical things you need. But Dad, I can't try to control this. I can't wage war against cancer like it's a case I can win through strategy and willpower. I have to trust that God has your life in His hands. Trust God. David, God gave us brains to use, medical knowledge to access, treatments to pursue. You're telling me to just sit back and hope for the best? I'm telling you, I'll support whatever treatments you and your doctors decide on, but I'm not going to become consumed with trying to orchestrate your healing, because, Dad, I've learned something over the past 6 months. There are battles I'm supposed to fight, and there are battles that are God's. And this one, your cancer, is God's battle. I have to trust Him with it. I'm disappointed in you, son. Again. First you won't help with your uncle's estate. Now you won't fight for my life. I don't know what's happened to you. The call ended badly, and I sat there feeling like the worst son in the world. Lauren found me sitting in the dark. How did it go? Terribly. He's disappointed in me. He thinks I'm abandoning him. Are you? No. I'm going to be there for him. But Lauren, if I do what he's asking, if I throw myself into fighting his cancer like I used to fight everything, I'll lose myself again. I'll become the person I was 6 months ago, and I can't do that, not even for him. So what are you going to do? I'm going to be his son, not his general, not his strategist, just his son, present, loving, supporting, but trusting God with the outcome. The next few months tested me in ways I'd never experienced. I went with Dad to doctor's appointments. I sat with him through chemotherapy. I held his hand when he was too weak to speak. I prayed with him, even though he was skeptical of prayer. But I didn't research every possible treatment. I didn't call specialists across the country. I didn't wage war against his cancer. And my father noticed, "David, you're here, but you're not fighting. It's like you've given up." I haven't given up, Dad. I just believe that healing is in God's hands, not mine. I can't control whether you live or die through sheer force of will, but I can be present with you, and I can pray. Prayer doesn't cure cancer. Maybe not. But Dad, God can. And whether He chooses to heal you or not, I have to trust Him, because trying to control this would destroy me, and it wouldn't change the outcome. My father and I had many conversations like that over those months. He didn't understand my approach. He saw it as weakness, as giving up, as not caring enough to fight. But I kept showing up, kept being present, kept loving him, even when he was disappointed in me. And slowly something shifted. One day, after a particularly difficult chemo session, Dad said something that surprised me. "You know, David, you're different than you used to be. Calmer, more peaceful. Even in the middle of all this, you're not panicked or frantic. You just are. I don't understand it, but I can see it. That's what resting in God looks like, Dad. It doesn't mean I don't care. It means I trust that He's in control, so I don't have to be. I wish I had that." It was the first time my father had ever acknowledged that maybe, just maybe, my faith offered something he didn't have. You can have it, Dad. It starts with admitting you can't control everything, that you're not strong enough to fight every battle, and then trusting that God is. We didn't talk more about it that day, but a seed had been planted. Meanwhile, at home, another battle was unfolding. Emma, my 8-year-old, had been struggling in school. Her teacher said she was anxious, having trouble focusing, falling behind in reading. My immediate instinct was to fix it, get her a tutor, create a reading schedule, implement systems to help her catch up. But I paused, I prayed, and I felt God's nudge. Be present with her anxiety. Don't just try to fix the symptoms. So instead of jumping to solutions, I talked to Emma. "Sweetheart, your teacher says you've been having a hard time at school. Tell me about that." She started crying. "I can't read as good as the other kids, and when I try, my brain feels all jumbled. And then I get scared I'm going to mess up, and that makes it even harder." "That sounds really hard. What are you scared of?" "That everyone will think I'm dumb, that I'll never get better at reading, that something's wrong with me." I held her and let her cry. And instead of immediately offering solutions, I just sat with her in her fear. "Emma, you're not dumb. Your brain just works differently. And that's okay. We're going to figure this out together. But right now, I just want you to know that I love you exactly as you are. Whether you're the best reader in your class or the one who struggles most, you're perfect to me." Over the next weeks, we did get her evaluated. Turned out she had a processing disorder that was making reading difficult. We got her support and accommodations, but the most important thing I did was simply be present with her anxiety instead of trying to fix it away. And Emma started to flourish. Not because I'd solved her reading problem, though the support helped, but because she knew she was loved and accepted even in her struggle. Lauren noticed the change in how I was approaching things. You're different with the kids now. You don't always jump to fixing. You sit with them in their hard moments. I'm learning that presence is often more powerful than solutions, that sometimes people don't need me to fix their problems. They need me to witness their struggle, to be with them in it. That's wisdom. It's rest, real rest. Not trying to control or fix or orchestrate, just being present and trusting God with outcomes I can't control. 6 months in, my father's treatment was showing results. The tumor was shrinking. The doctors were cautiously optimistic. And in one of our conversations, Dad said something that moved me to tears. "David, I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about trusting God, about not being able to control everything through fighting harder, and watching you these past months. How you've been present without being frantic, how you've stayed peaceful even when I was angry or scared. It's made me think maybe you're onto something. I still don't fully understand it, but I can't deny that you have something I don't. A peace that doesn't depend on circumstances, and I want that." That night my father prayed with me for the first time in his life, not a desperate foxhole prayer begging God to heal him, but a prayer of surrender. "God, I've spent my whole life believing I could control everything through strength and willpower, but I can't control this cancer. I can't control whether I live or die, and I'm tired of fighting alone." David says, "You fight for us." I don't fully understand that, but I'm willing to trust it. I'm willing to stop trying to be in control and let you be. As we prayed together, I realized something profound. By refusing to fight my father's battle for him, I'd created space for him to encounter God in his own battle. If I'd taken over, researched every treatment, called every specialist, tried to orchestrate his healing, he would have relied on me instead of God. But by stepping back and simply being present, I'd created space for God to work directly in my father's life. That's what resting from battles that aren't ours does. It creates space for God to fight in ways we never could. At work, I'd been handling fewer cases but winning more. My partners had noticed. Richard pulled me aside. "David, I have to admit, I was skeptical of your approach 6 months ago. Cutting back your caseload, setting boundaries, turning down big opportunities. I thought you were committing professional suicide, but your numbers tell a different story. Your win rate is higher than it's ever been. Your clients are more satisfied. Your work quality has improved, and you seem happier, less stressed. What changed?" I stopped trying to fight every battle. I started being strategic about which cases I took on, and I started trusting that doing fewer things well was better than doing many things poorly. It's working. And honestly, it's making me rethink how I approach my own work. I'm exhausted, David. I've been fighting every battle for 30 years, and I'm burning out. Then maybe it's time to learn to rest. Not in laziness, but in discernment. Fighting only the battles that are actually yours. How do I know which battles are mine? You pray. You ask God. You pay attention to what gives you life versus what drains you. You learn to distinguish between obligation and calling. And you start saying no to things that aren't your battles, even when they're good things. Richard was quiet for a moment. That sounds terrifying. It is. But it's also freeing. The most freeing thing I've ever done. Over the next months, Richard and I had regular conversations about rest, discernment, and fighting the right battles. And I watched him begin his own journey of learning to let go. That's when I realized my transformation wasn't just about me. It was creating ripples, affecting my father, my kids, my colleagues, everyone around me. When we learn to rest, we give others permission to rest. When we stop fighting every battle, we show others they don't have to either. One Sunday, Pastor Mike asked me to share briefly during the service about what God had been teaching me. I stood in front of the congregation, something that would have terrified me a year ago, and shared honestly. 6 months ago, God spoke to me in a parking lot after I lost a case. I was completely depleted, fighting on every front, losing more battles than I was winning. And God said, "Your fight is not yours, it is mine. Rest." That started a journey that's transformed every area of my life. My work, my family, my relationships, my health, my faith. I've learned that rest isn't laziness or irresponsibility. It's discernment. It's trusting God enough to fight only the battles He assigns and rest from the ones He doesn't. It's cost me things, professional opportunities, some people's respect, the false security of believing I could control everything. But it's given me so much more: peace, presence, real relationships, and faith, deep, tested faith, that God really does fight for me. If you're exhausted from fighting every battle, I want to tell you, you don't have to. God isn't asking you to fight everything. He's asking you to discern what's yours and trust Him with what's not. And when you do, when you really rest and trust, He'll fight for you in ways you never could fight for yourself. After the service, dozens of people approached me, all carrying the same exhaustion I'd felt 6 months ago, all looking for permission to stop fighting everything. I spent hours that afternoon talking with people, praying with them, helping them begin their own journey of learning to rest. And I realized this was part of my calling now. Not to fight battles for others, but to help them learn which battles are theirs and which are God's. That evening, our family gathered for dinner, our nightly ritual that had become sacred. Marcus shared about a conflict with a friend at school. Emma talked about her progress in reading. Lauren shared about a decision she was wrestling with at work. And I listened, really listened, without trying to fix or solve or control. And then we prayed together. Not just me praying over them, but all of us praying, bringing our battles to God, trusting Him to fight for us. This was what family looked like when we weren't all fighting separate battles alone, when we were bringing everything to the one who fought for us all. Later, after the kids were in bed, Lauren and I sat on the back porch. "You know what I'm most grateful for?" she said. "What?" "I have my husband back. Not the exhausted, stressed, distant version who was always fighting, but the real you, present, peaceful, engaged. David, you're happier now than I've seen you in years. Even with your dad's cancer, even with all the challenges, you're just lighter." That's what happens when you stop carrying weight you were never meant to carry. When you stop fighting battles that aren't yours. Lauren, I feel like I've been set free, not from responsibility or work or challenges, but from the crushing burden of believing I had to control everything. God really did fight for you. He did, over and over, in ways I never could have fought for myself. And the more I rest and trust, the more I see Him fighting. It's like all these years I was in the way, fighting battles that were His. And when I stepped aside and let Him fight, He did it better. What's next for you? What does this journey look like going forward? I don't know, but I'm not worried about it, because I've learned that God goes before me, that He's already in my future, fighting battles I haven't even encountered yet. My job isn't to have everything figured out. It's to stay close to Him, listen for His voice, and fight only the battles He assigns me. That's real faith. It's the only faith that works. Faith that I can trust God with everything, even the things I love most, even the battles that scare me most, even the outcomes I can't control. We sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars. And I prayed quietly, "Thank you, God, for 6 months of learning to rest, for every battle you fought for me, for every time you've proven faithful when I trusted you, for my father's healing, physical and spiritual, for Emma's progress, for Marcus's growth, for Lauren's partnership, for work that's sustainable instead of exhausting, for teaching me that rest isn't weakness, it's trust, and trust is the strongest thing I can offer you. Keep teaching me, keep fighting for me, keep showing me which battles are mine and which are yours, because I've learned something that's changed my life. My fight really isn't mine, it's yours, and you fight better than I ever could. Thank you for rest. Thank you for trust. Thank you for fighting for me. Always. 6 months in, and the journey of rest continued. But I was no longer fighting alone. God was fighting for me, and that changed everything. 9 months after God spoke to me about rest, I faced a moment that brought everything full circle, standing in the same courthouse parking lot where this journey had begun, but as a completely different person. I was there for a trial, a case I'd carefully chosen, prayed over, and accepted because I knew it was my battle to fight. A young mother wrongly accused of neglect, facing the loss of her children. The evidence clearly showed she was innocent, but the system was failing her. This was the kind of case I used to take on constantly, but now, 9 months into learning to rest, I'd said no to dozens of cases to say yes to this one. The trial had gone well. The judge was about to rule, and as I stood in that parking lot waiting for the verdict, I remembered the last time I'd been here, broken, depleted, crying in my car after losing a case I'd fought with everything I had. 9 months ago, God had spoken, "Your fight is not yours, it is mine. Rest." And now, standing in the same spot, I felt his presence again. "See what I've been teaching you? When you fight only the battles I assign you, I fight with you. And when I fight with you, victory is possible." My phone rang. The court clerk. "Mr. Harrison, the judge has ruled. You need to come back." I walked back into the courtroom, and the judge delivered her verdict. "I find the defendant not guilty on all charges. The evidence clearly demonstrates that Ms. Rodriguez is a fit and loving mother. Her children will remain in her custody." The relief on my client's face was worth everything. After the hearing, she hugged me through tears. Thank you for fighting for us, for not giving up." "I didn't fight alone," I told her. "God fought for you. I just showed up and did my part." Driving home, I realized something profound. I'd just won one of the most important cases of my career. But I wasn't exhausted. I wasn't depleted. I wasn't running on empty, because I'd fought this battle with God's strength, not my own. I'd rested in His guidance throughout the process. I'd been strategic instead of frantic, prayerful instead of anxious. This was what it looked like to fight the right battles the right way. That evening, Lauren met me at the door. "I can see it on your face. You won. We won. But more importantly, I'm not destroyed by it. I'm not exhausted from fighting. I actually feel good, grateful, peaceful. That's because you're fighting differently now. You're fighting the battles that are actually yours, with God's strength instead of your own." Exactly. And Lauren, standing in that parking lot today, the same place where I broke down 9 months ago, I felt God showing me how far I've come, how much has changed. We had a celebration dinner that night. Marcus and Emma wanted to hear about the case, about the mom who got to keep her kids, about how God had fought alongside me. "So you're still a fighter," Marcus said. "But now you only fight the right battles." "That's exactly right, buddy. And it makes all the difference." The next week brought an unexpected opportunity. A large non-profit organization that helps families in crisis reached out to me. They'd heard about the Rodriguez case and wanted to know if I'd be interested in joining their board of directors. "We need someone with your legal expertise," the director explained, "and someone who understands what it means to fight for families who can't fight for themselves." My first instinct was to say yes. This was important work. It aligned with my values. It would make a difference. But I'd learned to pause, to pray, to discern. "Can I have a week to think and pray about it?" I asked. Of course. Over the next week, I prayed extensively. I talked to Lauren. I considered what this commitment would require: time, energy, emotional investment. And I felt God's clear guidance. "This is your battle. This is part of what I'm calling you to." But there was more. "But you need to let something else go to make room for it." I realized I was still leading a Bible study at church, something I'd taken on months ago and had been doing out of obligation rather than calling. So I made 2 decisions. I accepted the board position and I resigned from the Bible study. When I told Pastor Mike, he surprised me. David, that's mature discernment. You're not just saying yes to everything good. You're saying yes to what God is calling you to and no to what He's not. That's wisdom. I'm still learning, but I'm starting to understand that even good things can be wrong battles if God isn't calling me to them. Exactly. And by saying no to the Bible study, you're creating space for someone else to step into their calling. That Sunday, I shared with the Bible study group that I'd be stepping down, and a young man named Tyler, someone who'd been quietly attending for months, approached me afterward. David, I've felt God nudging me to lead a study for a while, but as long as you were doing it, I didn't think there was a need. Can I take this over? Watching Tyler step into his calling, a calling that had been blocked by my presence, showed me something crucial. Sometimes our refusing to let go of battles prevents others from stepping into theirs. Around this time, my father's cancer went into remission. The doctors were amazed at his progress. Dad called me, his voice stronger than it had been in months. David, I have to tell you something. The doctors say the cancer is gone. They can't explain it. The treatment shouldn't have worked this well this fast, but it did. Dad, that's amazing. And David, I know why. It wasn't just the treatment. It was God. I've been praying like you taught me, surrendering, trusting, and He fought for me, just like you said He would. I felt tears streaming down my face. I'm so happy for you, Dad, but there's more. I've been thinking a lot about what you said months ago, about me being disappointed in you for not fighting my battle. And David, you were right. It wasn't your battle to fight, it was mine and God's. And by refusing to take it over, you forced me to turn to Him instead of relying on you. If you'd fought the way I wanted you to, researching every treatment, trying to orchestrate my healing, I would have leaned on your strength instead of finding God's. So thank you for loving me enough to let me fight my own battle with God. That conversation with my father was one of the most healing moments of my life. Not just because his cancer was gone, but because he finally understood what I'd been learning. Later that week I had coffee with Richard, my managing partner, who'd started his own journey of learning to rest. David, I need to tell you something. I've been making changes, setting boundaries, saying no to cases that aren't mine to fight. And it's been terrifying and liberating at the same time. How's it going? My wife says she has her husband back. My blood pressure has dropped. I'm sleeping better than I have in years. And my work, the cases I am taking, I'm doing them better because I'm not spread so thin. That's exactly what I experienced. But here's what I'm struggling with. I feel guilty, like I should be doing more, like saying no is selfish. I struggled with that too. But Richard, answer this. If you go back to fighting every battle and you burn out or have a heart attack, who does that serve? Not your clients, not your family, not your firm. The most generous thing you can do is fight only the battles you're called to fight, and fight them well. He nodded slowly. You're right. I've been confusing quantity with faithfulness. But faithfulness isn't doing everything. It's doing what God calls you to do. Exactly. Watching Richard's transformation reminded me that the ripples of learning to rest kept spreading. When one person changes, it affects everyone around them. At home, Marcus came to me with an interesting request. Dad, I've been thinking about what you taught me, about fighting only the battles that are mine, and I think I need to quit soccer. I was surprised. Marcus loves soccer. Why? Because I don't actually love it. I love basketball, but I kept playing soccer because I thought I should, because I'd been doing it for years, because my friends play, because you and Mom come to games. But it's not my battle anymore. Basketball is. I felt pride swell in my chest. My 10-year-old was learning discernment. Marcus, that's really mature thinking, and you're right. If soccer isn't your battle, you shouldn't keep fighting it. Let's talk to your coach and transition to basketball. You're not disappointed. Not at all. I'm proud of you for recognizing what's yours and what's not. That's wisdom most adults never learn. That evening, Lauren and I reflected on how our entire family had been transformed by this journey. The kids are learning it too, she said. Discernment, boundaries, fighting their own battles instead of trying to fight everyone's. David, what you've learned isn't just changing you, it's changing all of us. That's what happens when we align our lives with God's design. It affects everything, everyone. 9 months in, I decided to write down everything I'd learned. Not for publication, but for myself. A record of the journey. I titled it, Learning to Rest. 9 months of discovering whose fight it really is. As I wrote, patterns emerged. Lessons that had been revealed progressively over 9 months. Month 1 to 2, learning that rest is discernment, not laziness. That not every battle that needs fighting is mine to fight. That physical presence without emotional presence isn't enough. Month 3 to 4, learning to handle criticism and misunderstanding, that people who are still fighting every battle won't understand why I'm not. That Jesus modeled strategic rest and selective engagement. Month 5 to 6, learning that the right battles require full presence, which is only possible when I'm not exhausted from wrong ones. That sometimes presence is more powerful than solutions. Month 7 to 8, learning to trust God with the battles closest to my heart. My father's life, my children's struggles, that creating space for God to work sometimes means stepping back instead of stepping in. Month 9, learning that fighting the right battles with God's strength leads to victory without depletion. That the journey isn't about doing nothing, it's about strategic, spirit-led engagement. Reading through what I'd written, I saw God's faithfulness in every chapter, every battle I'd let go of, every time I'd trusted instead of controlled, every moment I'd rested instead of fought. That Sunday, Pastor Mike preached on Psalm 46:10, "Be still and know that I am God." Notice the order, he said. Be still first, then know that He is God. We often try to reverse it. We want to know He's God and then we'll be still. But God says the stillness comes first, the rest comes first. And in that rest, we discover who He really is. After the service, I approached Pastor Mike. Thank you for that message. It perfectly captures what I've been learning for 9 months. Your journey has been remarkable to watch, David. You've become a living testimony to the power of rest, of fighting only the battles God assigns. How does it feel? Freeing, terrifying sometimes, but mostly freeing. I never knew how heavy the weight of fighting every battle was until I put it down. And now I understand what Jesus meant when He said His yoke is easy and His burden is light. When we're fighting the battles He calls us to with His strength, it's sustainable, it's joyful even. But when we're fighting battles He never assigned us, that's when we get crushed under the weight. That evening I gathered my family for a special announcement. 9 months ago, God spoke to me in a parking lot and changed my life. He told me my fight wasn't mine, it was His, and He told me to rest. These 9 months have been a journey of learning what that means, learning which battles are mine and which aren't. Learning to trust God to fight for me instead of trying to fight everything myself. And I want to thank you all for being patient with me while I learned, for supporting me when I made changes that didn't make sense, for walking this journey with me. Marcus spoke up. Dad, you're way better now. You're here more. You're happier. And you taught us that we don't have to fight everything either. That's really cool. Emma added, I like that you're not always stressed. You play with us now, and you listen when we talk. Lauren squeezed my hand. You found yourself by letting go. That's the miracle of it all. Later, sitting on our back porch, the place where so many important conversations had happened over 9 months, I prayed with deep gratitude. God, 9 months ago, you spoke 5 words that changed everything. Your fight is not yours. And you followed them with 2 more that defined the journey. Rest, trust. I've learned so much about discernment, about presence, about what it means to fight the right battles with your strength instead of fighting every battle with mine. I've learned that rest isn't weakness, it's faith, that boundaries aren't selfish, they're wisdom, that saying no to good things creates space for the best things. I've watched you fight for me in ways I never could fight for myself. The bar complaint that resolved without me waging war. My father's healing that happened when I stepped back and created space for him to encounter you. the victories that come when I fight alongside you instead of trying to do it alone. Thank you for 9 months of transformation, for every hard lesson, for every moment of choosing trust over control, for every battle I let go of that you handled better than I ever could. Thank you that this journey has affected my whole family, that Lauren has her husband back, that Marcus and Emma are learning discernment, that my father found you through his cancer. Thank you that the ripples keep spreading, that Richard is learning to rest, that Tyler stepped into his calling, that people at church are beginning their own journeys. 9 months in, and I'm not the same person I was. I'm freer, more peaceful, more joyful, more present, not because circumstances are perfect, but because I've learned that you really do fight for me. Keep teaching me. The journey isn't over. There will be new battles, new choices between control and trust, new opportunities to rest or fight. But I know the secret now. My fight really isn't mine. It's yours. And when I remember that, when I really rest and trust, everything changes. Thank you for rest. Thank you for teaching me whose fight it really is. Thank you for fighting for me. Always. 9 months after learning to rest, I stood in my office looking at a case file on my desk. A potential new client, a difficult case, a battle that would require everything I had. My old instinct was to take it, to fight, to prove I could win. But I paused, I prayed, and I asked the question I'd learned to ask. God, is this my battle? The answer came clearly. No, this one isn't yours. Rest. Let someone else fight it. And without hesitation, without guilt, without second guessing, I said no. Because I'd learned something profound over 9 months. My fight wasn't mine. It was his. And that changed everything. 1 year after God spoke to me about rest, I returned to the exact spot where it had all begun. The courthouse parking lot where I'd broken down after losing a case, completely depleted from fighting battles that weren't mine. But I wasn't there to relive the past. I was there to meet someone who was exactly where I'd been 12 months earlier. His name was James, a young attorney at my firm who'd reached out after hearing about my journey. He'd called me late one night, his voice shaking. "David, I'm exactly where you were a year ago. I'm drowning. I don't know how to stop fighting everything. Can we talk?" So I met him in that parking lot, on purpose, because sometimes you need to revisit where you broke to remember how God rebuilt you. James sat in his car, looking as exhausted and desperate as I'd felt a year ago. I got in the passenger seat. "Thank you for meeting me," he said. "I heard you speak at the men's group about learning to rest, about fighting only the battles God assigns. And David, I need that, but I don't know how to get there." I looked at this young man, maybe 30 years old, already burning out, and I saw myself. "Tell me what's happening." For the next 30 minutes, James poured out his story. Too many cases, too many obligations at church, too many people depending on him, too much pressure to prove himself, exhausted marriage, disconnected from his kids, running on empty. "I know I can't keep doing this," he said, "but I don't know how to stop. Every time I think about saying no to something, I feel guilty, like I'm letting people down, like I'm being weak or irresponsible." I understand. That's exactly how I felt sitting right here a year ago. Can I tell you what happened? I shared my story. Not a sanitized, cleaned-up version, but the raw truth, the panic attack, the breakdown. God's words that had seemed impossible. "Your fight is not yours. It is mine. Rest." I told him about the first weeks of learning to discern which battles were mine. The criticism from people who didn't understand, almost missing that Marcus was struggling. The bar complaint that threatened my career, my father's cancer, every test, every challenge, every moment of choosing trust over control. And James, here's what I've learned. Rest isn't about doing nothing. It's about discernment. Fighting only the battles God calls you to, and fighting them with His strength instead of yours. It's the hardest thing I've ever done, but it's also the most freeing. How do you know which battles are yours? You pray, you ask God, you pay attention to what gives you life versus what drains you. You learn to distinguish between obligation and calling, and you start small, one battle at a time, one no at a time, one moment of rest at a time. What if I make mistakes? What if I say no to something that actually was my battle? Then God will redirect you. But James, I promise you, saying no to wrong battles is far less dangerous than saying yes to all of them. Because if you keep fighting everything, you'll burn out, and then you won't be able to fight any battles, even the ones that are truly yours. We sat in that parking lot for 2 hours. I shared practical steps. I prayed with him. I gave him my number and told him to call any time he needed encouragement or perspective. As he left, James said something that struck me. Thank you for being honest about how hard this is. Everyone else makes it seem like if you just pray more or have more faith, everything will be easy. But you're telling me it's going to be hard and it's worth it anyway. Because it is hard and it is worth it. Driving home, I reflected on how far I'd come in a year. I'd started this journey broken and desperate. Now I was mentoring someone else through it. The student had become the teacher. That week, I had an appointment that felt significant, meeting with a publisher who wanted to turn my story into a book. David, your journey resonates with so many people, the publisher said. Professionals who are burning out, parents who are exhausted from trying to do everything, church members who feel guilty for not serving more. Your story gives them permission to rest, to discern, to fight only their battles. I never intended to write a book. This was just my personal journey. That's what makes it powerful. It's not theoretical. It's lived experience. Would you consider writing it? I told him I'd pray about it, and over the next week I did. God, is this my battle? Writing a book about learning to rest? The answer came clearly. Yes. This is part of how I want to use your story, to help others learn what you've learned. So I agreed to write the book, but I knew I'd have to practice what I'd learned, writing it without letting it consume me, without fighting battles that weren't mine in the process. Around this time, something unexpected happened at the firm. Richard, my managing partner, made an announcement at a partners meeting. I've been inspired by David's journey over the past year. His willingness to set boundaries, to say no to battles that aren't his, to prioritize presence over productivity, and I've been making changes in my own life. As a result, I'm proposing we restructure how we approach caseloads and billable hours. Instead of incentivizing quantity, taking as many cases as possible and working as many hours as we can, I want to incentivize quality, strategic selection of cases, excellent work on fewer matters, sustainable pace. I know this is radical for a law firm, but I believe it will make us better attorneys and healthier people. And David's example has shown me it's possible. The room was silent. Then slowly, other partners started nodding, agreeing, sharing their own exhaustion and burnout. What had started as my personal journey was now influencing an entire firm's culture. After the meeting, several partners approached me. Thank you for showing us a different way. I've been killing myself for this job. Maybe I don't have to. Can we talk about how you made these changes? I realized when you learn to rest, you don't just change your own life. You change the culture around you. You give others permission to change too. At home, Lauren was planning our 20th wedding anniversary. But instead of an elaborate trip or expensive celebration, she had a different idea. David, what I want most for our anniversary is to celebrate what we've found this past year. Not just survived, actually thrived, found each other again, built a life we both love. So I don't want fancy restaurants or exotic locations. I want a weekend away, just us. No phones, no obligations, just rest and presence and gratitude. We spent that weekend at a cabin in the mountains. No agenda, no plans. Just being together. On our anniversary evening, we sat by a fire and reflected on 20 years of marriage, and particularly this transformative year. When you had your breakdown in that parking lot, Lauren said, I was terrified. I thought I was losing you, that the stress was going to kill you or destroy our marriage. But what actually happened was the opposite. I got you back, the real you, not the stressed, exhausted, always fighting version, but the present, peaceful, engaged version. David, this past year has been the best year of our marriage. Mine too. And Lauren, I couldn't have done this without you. You supported me when people were criticizing. You encouraged me when I doubted. You reminded me what really mattered. Thank you. You know what I'm most grateful for? That our kids are seeing what healthy looks like. They're watching their dad learn to rest, to set boundaries, to fight only his battles. That's a gift that will affect them their whole lives. The next morning, we hiked to a waterfall, and sitting by that water, I prayed with deep gratitude. God, 1 year ago today, you spoke words that changed everything. Your fight is not yours, it is mine. Rest. I fought you on it at first. I didn't understand. I thought rest meant weakness or irresponsibility. But you've shown me that rest is trust, that fighting only my battles means I can actually win them, that presence is more powerful than productivity, that your way is better than mine. Thank you for this year, for every hard lesson, for every moment of choosing trust over control, for every battle you fought for me. Thank you for healing my marriage, for connecting me with my kids, for transforming my work, for giving me purpose in helping others learn to rest. Thank you for my father's healing, both physical and spiritual, for Richard's transformation, for James beginning his journey, for everyone who's been affected by what you've taught me. A year ago, I was broken. Now, I'm whole. Not because my circumstances are perfect, but because I've learned to trust you with everything. Keep teaching me. The journey isn't over. There will be new battles, new opportunities to rest or fight, new chances to trust or control. But I know the secret now. My fight really isn't mine. It's yours. And when I remember that, when I truly rest and trust, everything is different. Thank you, God, for fighting for me, always. Back home, I received an email from my father. He'd been cancer-free for 6 months now, and his email was about more than just his health. David, I've been thinking a lot about this past year, about how you refused to fight my battle for me, how you stepped back and let me encounter God in my own struggle. At the time, I was angry. I felt abandoned. I couldn't understand why you wouldn't fight for my life with everything you had. But now, I see the gift you gave me. By refusing to take over, you forced me to turn to God, to learn to trust Him, to discover faith I never knew I needed. If you'd fought the way I wanted you to, I might have beaten cancer, but I wouldn't have found God. Now I have both, health and faith, and the faith is worth more than the healing. Thank you, son, for loving me enough to let me fight my own battle with God beside me. You taught me what rest really means, and it's changed my life. Reading my father's email, I felt tears streaming down my face, because it confirmed what I'd been learning. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do is refuse to fight battles that aren't ours, even when people we love are begging us to. That creates space for God to work in ways we never could. The following Sunday, Pastor Mike invited me to share my 1-year testimony with the church. I stood before the congregation, the same people who'd watched my journey, some with support, some with skepticism. 1 year ago, God spoke to me 5 words that changed my life. Your fight is not yours. And then He added 2 more that defined the journey. Rest, trust. I want to tell you honestly, this has been the hardest year of my life. Not because of circumstances, though there were challenges, but because learning to rest required dying to everything I'd built my identity on. I had to die to being the guy who could handle anything, to being indispensable, to being the fighter who never backed down. I had to let go of battles I thought I had to fight and trust God to fight them for me. And here's what I've discovered. God fights better than I do, every single time. This year, I've watched God fight battles I couldn't win, heal relationships I'd damaged, transform situations I'd tried to control, create opportunities I never would have found on my own. Not because I'm special or because I have great faith, but because I finally got out of His way. I finally stopped fighting battles that were His and started resting in His strength. If you're exhausted today, if you're fighting on every front and losing on most of them, I want to tell you what God told me. Your fight is not yours. It's His, and He's inviting you to rest. Not in laziness or irresponsibility, but in trust, in discernment, in fighting only the battles he assigns you and letting him fight the rest. It will cost you people's approval, opportunities that seem important, the false security of believing you control everything. But it will give you so much more: peace, presence, real relationships, and the joy of watching God fight for you in ways you never could fight for yourself. After the service, the line of people wanting to talk stretched out the door. One after another, they shared their own exhaustion, their own desperate need to learn to rest. I spent the entire afternoon talking with people, praying with them, helping them take first steps toward discernment and rest. And I realized this was my calling now, not just practicing law, but helping people learn to fight only their battles, to rest in God's strength instead of their own, to discover the freedom that comes from trusting God to fight for them. That evening, I sat in my office at home, looking at the manuscript I'd started for the book. The publisher wanted to title it, "Your Fight Is Not Yours, Learning to Rest in God's Strength." I thought about everything I'd learned, everything I'd share in this book, and I prayed, God, if this book is going to help people, it can't just be my story. It has to point them to you, to the truth that changed everything for me. We don't have to fight every battle. You fight for us. And when we trust that, really trust it, everything changes. Help me write this book without letting it become a battle that isn't mine. Help me rest, even in the process of sharing about rest. Use this story, my breakdown, my transformation, my year of learning, to help others find the same freedom. Because the world is full of people like I was, exhausted, depleted, fighting on every front, believing they have to do it all. And they don't. You're fighting for them. They just need to learn to rest. 1 year after God spoke to me about rest, I'd become someone unrecognizable from who I'd been. Not the exhausted fighter who tried to control everything, but a man learning daily to discern his battles and trust God with the rest. Not someone who'd figured it all out, but someone who'd learned that not having to figure it all out was the point. The journey continued. New battles would come, new opportunities to rest or fight, new moments of choosing trust over control. But I'd learned the secret that changed everything. My fight wasn't mine, it was his. And when I remembered that, when I truly rested and trusted, he fought for me in ways I never could. That was the gift of this year, the transformation I'd never expected, the freedom I'd been searching for all along. Rest, trust, discernment, fighting only the battles God assigned, and watching him fight the rest. That was the life I'd found, the life I'd never want to leave, the life of rest. 18 months after God spoke to me about rest, I stood before the largest crowd I'd ever addressed, a national conference for lawyers dealing with burnout and work-life balance. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was speaking about rest to people whose entire profession was built on fighting. The conference organizer had titled my keynote, "Your Fight Is Not Yours, a Lawyer's Journey from Burnout to Rest." As I looked out at hundreds of attorneys, many wearing the same exhausted, desperate expression I'd worn 18 months ago, I felt the weight of what I was about to share. This wasn't just my story anymore. It was an invitation to a different way of life. "My name is David Harrison," I began. 18 months ago, I had a panic attack in a courthouse parking lot after losing a case. I was completely depleted, fighting on every front: work, home, church, family. And I was losing more battles than I was winning. In that parking lot, broken and exhausted, God spoke to me. "Your fight is not yours, it is mine. Rest." Those words started a journey that has transformed every area of my life. And today, I want to share with you what I've learned. Not because I've figured it all out, but because I've discovered a truth that changed everything. We were never meant to fight every battle. For the next hour, I shared the complete story, the breakdown, the first days of learning to discern which battles were mine, the criticism from people who thought I was giving up, almost missing that Marcus was struggling because I was so focused on learning to rest. The bar complaint that threatened my career, but resolved when I trusted God instead of fighting. My father's cancer and the gift of stepping back. Every test, every challenge, every moment of choosing trust over control. Here's what I want you to understand, I said, looking out at those exhausted faces. Rest isn't laziness. It's not irresponsibility. It's not giving up or backing down. Rest is discernment. It's strategic engagement. It's fighting only the battles God assigns you and trusting Him to fight the rest. And when you do that, when you really learn to rest, everything changes. Your work gets better because you're not spread thin. Your relationships deepen because you're actually present. Your health improves because you're not carrying weight you were never meant to carry. Most importantly, you discover that God really does fight for you, not in some abstract spiritual way, but in concrete, measurable ways. He opens doors you couldn't open. He resolves situations you couldn't resolve. He fights battles you couldn't win. But you have to get out of His way. You have to stop trying to control everything. You have to rest. The response was overwhelming. During the Q&A, dozens of hands shot up. How do you handle the guilt of saying no? What if people are depending on you? How do you know which battles are yours? What if resting means things don't get done? I answered each question honestly, sharing what I'd learned through trial and error over 18 months. After the keynote, the line of people wanting to talk stretched across the conference hall. One by one, they shared their stories, all variations of mine, all desperately needing permission to stop fighting everything. A woman in her 40s, tears streaming. I have 3 kids and I'm up for partner, and my marriage is falling apart, and I don't know how to stop. A young associate who'd already had 2 stress-related hospital visits. I thought this was just what being a lawyer meant, fighting all the time. I didn't know there was another way. An older attorney near retirement. I've spent 40 years fighting every battle, and I've won a lot of them, but I've lost my health, my family, and almost my sanity. I wish someone had told me what you're telling these young lawyers. I spent hours that day talking with attorneys, praying with them, helping them see that there was a different way to practice law and live life. That evening, I called Lauren from my hotel room. "How did it go?" she asked. "Overwhelming. Lauren, there were hundreds of lawyers there who are exactly where I was 18 months ago, drowning, exhausted, believing they have to fight every battle, and they're looking for permission to rest. You're giving them that permission by sharing your story, by showing them it's possible. It's bigger than I expected. This isn't just about me anymore. It's about helping an entire profession rethink what success looks like. That's exactly what God's been preparing you for, using your breakdown to help others avoid theirs." Flying home the next day, I reflected on 18 months of transformation. I'd started this journey broken, depleted, certain that I had to fight every battle to prove my worth. Now I understood that my worth wasn't in what I fought. It was in who I was, God's child, learning to trust Him. I'd lost some things along the way, professional opportunities I'd turned down, people's approval when they didn't understand, the false security of believing I could control everything. But I'd gained infinitely more. A marriage that was thriving, kids who actually knew their father, work that was excellent but sustainable, peace that didn't depend on circumstances, and faith, deep, tested faith, that God really did fight for me. At home, I found a letter waiting for me. It was from James, the young attorney I'd met in the parking lot 3 months earlier. "David, I wanted to update you on my journey. These past 3 months have been the hardest and best of my life. I've started saying no. I've set boundaries. I've resigned from obligations that weren't mine. And you were right, it's been terrifying and freeing at the same time. My wife says she has her husband back. My kids are seeing their dad more. My work is actually better because I'm not exhausted, and I'm learning to trust God in ways I never have before. Thank you for meeting me in that parking lot, for being honest about how hard this is, for showing me it's possible. I'm still learning, But I'm not drowning anymore, and that's everything. Reading James's letter, I felt profound gratitude, because my transformation wasn't just changing me, it was creating ripples that kept spreading. That weekend, our family celebrated Marcus's 11th birthday, and during the celebration, he asked if he could share something. I want to thank Dad for this year, because a year ago, you were here but you weren't really here. You were always stressed and distracted, but then you changed. And now, you're actually here. You play with me and Emma, you listen to us, you come to my games. And Dad, you taught me something really important, that I don't have to do everything either, that it's okay to quit things that aren't mine, that rest isn't weakness. So thank you for being a different dad now. I like this version way better. Everyone at the party was quiet, and I felt tears streaming down my face. Thank you, buddy. That means everything to me. Later, Lauren found me alone in the kitchen. That was beautiful what Marcus said. It was, and Lauren, hearing it from him, hearing that this transformation has affected him, that's worth more than any professional success or achievement. Because I'm not just changing my life, I'm changing what he thinks is possible, what he believes about rest and trust and fighting only his battles. You're breaking generational patterns. Your father taught you to fight everything. Now you're teaching Marcus to discern. That's legacy. The following week, my book released, Your Fight Is Not Yours, Learning to Rest in God's Strength. I'd been anxious about it, worried it wouldn't resonate, that my story was too specific, that people wouldn't connect. But within days, the emails started flooding in, from a single mother. I've been fighting to do everything for my kids by myself. Your book gave me permission to ask for help and trust God with what I can't control. From a pastor, I've been burning out trying to meet every need in my congregation. You showed me that's not what God asked me to do. Thank you for that freedom. From a business owner, I thought success meant working 80 hours a week and never saying no. Your story showed me there's a better way. From a college student, I'm just starting my career and everyone's telling me to hustle and grind and never rest. But your book showed me I don't have to build my life that way. Thank you. Message after message, story after story, people who were drowning finding permission to rest, people who were exhausted discovering that God would fight for them if they'd just get out of the way. One email particularly moved me. It was from my father. David, I finished your book last night, and I want you to know you got it right. Everything you wrote about our journey, about my cancer, about me learning to trust God, it's all true. And son, I'm proud of you. Not for being a successful lawyer or writing a book, but for having the courage to break, to admit you couldn't carry everything, to learn to rest when everything in your training and upbringing told you to fight. You're a better man than I was at your age, and you're teaching your kids what I never taught you. That strength isn't about fighting every battle. It's about trusting God to fight for you. I love you, son. And I'm grateful God used my cancer to teach both of us what rest really means. Reading my father's email, I realized something profound. This journey had healed more than just my burnout. It had healed generational wounds, broken patterns, created new possibilities for my children and grandchildren. That Sunday, Pastor Mike asked me to share one final time with the church, an 18-month testimony. I stood before the congregation that had watched my entire journey. Some had supported me from the beginning. Others had been skeptical but were now beginning their own journeys of learning to rest. 18 months ago I was broken, fighting every battle, drowning in exhaustion, and God spoke 5 words that changed my life. Your fight is not yours. I want to tell you what those 18 months have taught me. First, rest is not weakness. It's faith. When you rest from battles that aren't yours, you're not giving up. You're trusting that God is strong enough to handle them without you. Second, discernment is crucial. Not every battle that needs fighting is yours to fight. God has assigned you specific battles. Your job is to discern which ones they are and fight only those. Third, presence is more powerful than productivity. Being truly present in your right battles is better than being scattered across wrong ones. Fourth, God really does fight for you. Not sometimes, not occasionally, always. When you step back and trust him, he moves in ways you never could. Finally, your transformation affects everyone around you. When you learn to rest, you give others permission to rest. When you set boundaries, you show others they can too. When you trust God to fight for you, you inspire others to do the same. 18 months ago, I thought rest would mean losing everything. Instead, I've gained everything that actually matters, not professional success or people's approval, but peace, presence, real relationships, deep faith, and the joy of watching God fight for me every single day. If you're exhausted today, if you're fighting battles on every front, I want to invite you to something radical: rest. Not in laziness or irresponsibility, but in trust. Discern which battles are yours. Fight only those, and watch what God does with the rest. After the service, dozens of people approached me. Some wanted prayer. Some wanted advice about which battles to let go. Some just wanted to say thank you for showing them a different way. And I realized this was my calling now, not just practicing law or writing books, but helping people discover the freedom of fighting only their battles and trusting God with the rest. That evening, our family gathered for our weekly Sabbath dinner, a tradition that had become sacred over these 18 months. As we sat around the table, I looked at Lauren, Marcus, and Emma, at the life we'd built, at the peace that filled our home, at the presence that characterized our relationships. This was what rest looked like. Not perfection, not the absence of challenges, but a family learning together to fight only their battles and trust God with the rest. After dinner, I went to my office and opened my journal. I'd been documenting this journey from the beginning, and now I wanted to capture where I'd arrived. 18 months ago, God spoke to me in a parking lot. Your fight is not yours. It is mine. Rest. I thought those words meant giving up, backing down, choosing weakness over strength, but I was wrong about everything. Rest isn't giving up. It's letting go of battles I was never meant to fight. It isn't backing down. It's stepping aside so God can fight better than I ever could. It isn't weakness. It's the strongest thing I've ever done, because it takes more strength to trust than to control. 18 months in, I'm not the same person. I'm freer, more peaceful, more joyful, more present, not because my circumstances are perfect, but because I've learned a secret that changes everything. God fights for me, always, in ways I can see and ways I can't, through victories and through challenges, in the battles I understand and the ones I don't. My job isn't to fight everything, it's to discern what's mine, fight those battles with his strength and trust him with the rest. That's rest. That's faith. That's the life I was always meant to live, but spent 37 years running from. Thank you, God, for breaking me open in that parking lot, for speaking words that seemed impossible, for walking with me through 18 months of transformation, for fighting for me every single day. Thank you for giving me back my marriage, my children, my peace, my joy, my life. Thank you that this journey isn't just about me, that you're using my story to help others find the same freedom. Thank you that my fight really isn't mine, that it's yours, that I can rest. Keep teaching me. The journey isn't over. There will be new battles, new opportunities to trust or control, new chances to rest or fight. But I know the secret now, and I'm never going back. My fight is not mine. It's yours. And that changes everything, forever. I closed my journal and walked out to the back porch where Lauren was sitting, watching the stars. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "How far we've come. How different life is now. How grateful I am that God loved me enough to break me. Break you open, you mean, to rebuild you into who you were always meant to be." Exactly. Lauren, if someone had told me 18 months ago that having a breakdown in a parking lot would be the best thing that ever happened to me, I would have thought they were crazy. But it's true. That moment of complete depletion, that was the moment God could finally get through to me. Because I'd stopped fighting long enough to hear him. And what he said changed everything. Your fight is not yours, it is mine. Rest. 5 words and 2 more. That's all it took. And 18 months later, my entire life is different. Our entire life is different because this journey didn't just change you, it changed all of us. We're a family that knows how to rest now, that understands discernment, that trusts God to fight for us. That's legacy. That's what I want Marcus and Emma to carry with them. Not that their dad was a successful lawyer or wrote a book, but that he learned to rest, that he showed them what trusting God really looks like. We sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars. And I prayed quietly, God, 18 months ago you spoke, and I'm still learning what you meant, still discovering what rest really means, still fighting the battles you assign and learning to let go of the ones you don't. But this I know, you are faithful, you do fight for me, and when I trust you, really trust you, everything is different. Thank you for 18 months of transformation, for every lesson, every test, every victory, every moment of learning to rest. Thank you for fighting for me, always, in ways I see and ways I don't, through circumstances I understand and ones I don't. Thank you that my fight really isn't mine, that it's yours, that I can rest. That changes everything. It always will. Forever and always, my fight is not mine, it's yours, and I'm finally completely joyfully at rest. 18 months after God spoke to him in a parking lot, David Harrison had become someone unrecognizable from who he'd been. Not the exhausted fighter trying to control everything, but a man resting in God's strength. Not someone who'd figured everything out, but someone who'd learned he didn't have to. Not the warrior who never backed down, but the disciple who'd learned when to fight and when to rest. His fight wasn't his, it was God's, and God fought better than David ever could. That truth had transformed everything, his work, his marriage, his parenting, his faith, his peace, his joy, his very identity. He was no longer defined by what he fought, but by who fought for him. And in that rest, that deep, soul-level rest that came from trusting God with everything, David had found the life he'd been searching for all along. A life of peace, presence, purpose, a life of fighting only his battles and watching God fight the rest. A life of rest. The journey continued. New battles would come, new opportunities to trust or control. But David knew the secret now. His fight was not his, it was God's. And when he remembered that, when he truly rested and trusted, God moved in ways he never could. That was the gift, the transformation, the freedom, rest, not as weakness or giving up, but as trust, as faith, as the strongest thing he'd ever done. Your fight is not yours, God had said. It is mine, rest. And David had finally learned what that meant. Everything.